Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Thursday matinee afternoon edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Davila, of course.
Hello.
What's going on? Thanks, everybody, for accommodating us on the special time today. Great crowd to start the show. 507 in the Rumble chat, 418 on YouTube, 924 in total. That's a great crowd to start the show, especially on this off time. We usually do the morning shows on Thursdays. I had my twin boys' kindergarten orientation today that I had to go to at 9 a.m., so, we had a good time there. They have to bring you there a few days early. We had to learn how to work the tampon machines in the boys' bathrooms and everything. And, then we had to get their cubbies set up. And, it took about an hour and a half. So we couldn't do the morning show today. But thanks for being here with us in the afternoon.
This is what we have to do to make everyone feel accepted, Keaton. That's a small price to pay.
Yeah, exactly. I was happy to do it. It was fine. I learned myself. I feel like, the kids are learning now things that I didn't learn when I was a kid.
If under the stress of the show, your ass starts bleeding, you're covered.
Yeah. I forgot, there are certain things you learn in school that you forget when you grow up. Like, I forget the periodic table. I forget what the numbers under the elements mean. I forget how to put a tampon in. There are certain things you just don't remember. It's kind of nice. That's one of the joys of having children is you get to relearn some of those things.
And that must be like the best part of raising a kid, like remembering the first time you inserted a tampon in your anus.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
With a Woody Woodpecker cartoon on in the background.
Yeah,
and now you get to impart that to your own children.
No, there's a nostalgia about it. It's good memories and good times. Yes. But we thank you all very much for being here.
In all seriousness, though, in one of his essays, Hunter Thompson wrote about his early days in the news business. And back then, that's when you really had these like hard-bitten working class drunk reporters.
Right.
And he said the thing that made him not go the traditional news route was when one of the old reporters asked for a maxi pad because his ass was bleeding all the time. He said, I'm out of here. That's what did it.
That's what did it. Well,
he saw a terrifying vision of his own future.
Yeah, I bet. Tonight, folks, we are not going to be live streaming, and I guess you're going to have to wait until Sunday to hear our take about the Kamala sit-down interview. Kamala and Tim Walz sitting down with Dana Bash on CNN for their interview. We will, in all likelihood, I have to get in touch with them, but I'm pretty sure we can make this happen. On Saturday morning, we'll be live streaming the Uhuru protest at the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg. As long as they have a good live stream. We are doing that. Yeah. As long as they have a good live stream, I think we can make that happen. Like I said, it's not totally confirmed. I will check with them and see what the logistics are. But join our newsletter, as we say, so you're up to date on that. But look, people are really anticipating this Kamala Walz joint interview. And I'm telling you guys, you guys who think something eventful is going to happen don't understand politics. And by don't understand politics, I mean you don't understand vibes. You don't understand vibes. She's got her little good luck charm there, the nice, Fargo bakery boy there, the chummy little guy, and she's going to be just fine. I think she's going to be just fine. I don't think it's going to be as eventful as people are making it out to be. I really don't.
He's just kind of funny looking.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny looking how? Funny looking.
Funny looking. Yeah, exactly.
Funny looking.
Got her
sort of
folksy
fella.
little teddy bear there, and I think she'll coast through it. She's not going to get a tough question, and if she does, look, they've been preparing for this for what, a month and a half.
Okay, so this is what I would say. Kamala is so awful, you never know, because she's been interviewed by only friendly people, and all of her cringiest moments were in that context. So you just never know. It tells you a lot about the level of confidence they have in their CGI avatar, that they feel a need, with all of this pressure to show she can handle an interview, to say, fuck it, fuck the optics. We're sending in Waltz. Waltz, if she starts cackling, you do your Newt Rockney impression.
Yeah.
We're going to fight. We're going to win. You just jump in. As soon as you hear, fight, win. That's it. Just
or he'll
cut
laugh.
That shit.
Maybe he'll back her up. He'll just laugh as if, it's really funny. No, she's not weird for laughing. That's funny. You're weird for not laughing.
You're weird for not laughing.
Yeah, exactly.
Surely Dana Bash has found a way to feed them the questions in some manner. So they pretty much know what's going to be coming.
Yeah.
I only say you could have a cringe moment because it's Kamala, man. It's Kamala. She's awful. She's absolutely awful. So, it depends on how perfectly scripted it is. But wow. If you needed more evidence to show that this is a shadowy cabal of insiders puppeteering what they hope is going to be the perfect instrument for their will in Kamala, it's that these people are not stupid. They took the most unpopular VP in modern history and made her the representative, the avatar of the politics of joy in a couple of weeks. These are not stupid people.
No.
They know that it's bad optics to put her up there with Waltz. Mm-hmm. They're doing it anyway. That's how bad she is, and they know it.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. We'll be watching. We won't be live, but we'll be watching in some capacity. But folks, we got plenty to get to today. I'm actually very excited for today's show. I think we have a very, very broad range of content today. And we're going to start out with a feel-good story. This is really like, when you're walking down the street and you see a cute little puppy, it just kind of brightens your day. This is that kind of story here. Mexico freezes relationships with U.S. Canadian embassies, which criticized judicial reform. That's right. It just warms the heart to see the United States humiliated like this. It's a wonderful thing to witness. It just puts a smile on my face. I'm already in a good mood today, and so I wanted to start out with this before the mood sours, because we do have some heavier topics later, but let's savor this moment while we can. The Mexican government has paused its relationship with the U.S. and Canadian embassies in the country, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said on Tuesday, after their ambassadors criticized a proposed judicial reform that he backs. There is a pause, López Obrador said in a press conference, clarifying that the freeze was with the embassies and not with the countries. So it's not a total embargo, but they are freezing relations with the embassies. The president is pushing a reform to elect judges, including Supreme Court justices, by popular vote. A committee in the lower house of Mexico's Congress passed the proposal late on Monday, paving the way for it to be approved when the newly elected Congress takes office in September. Proponents say the reform will boost democracy and help fix a system that they argue does not serve the public, while critics say it will skew power in favor of the executive, cut off judges' careers, and make the courts more susceptible to criminal influence. U.S. Ambassador Ken Salazar last week labeled the reform a, quote, major risk to the functioning of Mexico's democracy and cautioned of a potential risk to the U.S.-Mexico trade relationship. See, there it is in the same sentence. Democracy is usually code for trade relationship when it comes to other countries.
Yeah.
Democracy is code for business interests. The U.S. and Mexico are each other's largest trade partners. Canada's ambassador to Mexico, Graham Clark, also warned of investment concerns. Later on Tuesday, after López Obrador's comments, Salazar posted a diplomatic note from the embassy dated August 23rd. Quote, the United States supports the concept of judicial reform in Mexico, but we have significant concerns that the popular election of judges would neither address judicial corruption nor strengthen the judicial branch of the government of Mexico, the note read. The Canadian embassy did not immediately respond to requests for comment. López Obrador has criticized what he called Salazar's interference in internal politics. How are we going to allow the ambassador to give his opinion, to say what we're doing is wrong, López Obrador added. We aren't going to tell him to get out of the country, but for him to read our Constitution, yes, we will say that. Salazar had previously said he was open to speaking with Mexican government leaders to discuss different judicial models. López Obrador said the pause would continue until there was confirmation that the embassies would respect Mexico's independence. Later on Tuesday, Mexican Foreign Minister Alicia Bárcena backed López Obrador in a message posted on X, saying decisions about Mexico are made by Mexicans. She reiterated, however, that the relationship with friends and neighbors in North America was a priority and remained fluid and normal on a daily basis. The diplomatic note from the U.S. said the country had the utmost respect for Mexico's sovereignty. Mexico's peso was down 1.65% in the early afternoon trading. It has dropped sharply since the June elections, in which López Obrador's favorite successor, Claudia Sheinbaum, won the presidency, and their Morena party and allies nabbed a supermajority in the lower house and nearly a supermajority in the Senate. A two-thirds vote is necessary to amend the Constitution, which the judicial reform would need to do. So let's take a look at what the Wilson Center, nonpartisan American think tank, has to say about this. Turning Point, the impact of AMLO's reforms on the USMCA, which is the 21st century, NAFTA, and nearshoring. Nearshoring means not offshoring. Offshoring is the ugly word where you ship jobs overseas. Nearshoring is, hey, you give the job to a neighbor, right? A little south of the border, a little north of the border. That's nearshoring. That's their term.
That's like when you need ice.
Yeah,
you
it's
go
like
to
when you need
Canada.
ice. Right, you go to Canada. We nearshored the ice in.
They
right,
know
they get to
about
nearshore
ice.
the ice. Yeah, exactly. Following the decisive electoral victory, the Wilson Center writes, by Claudia Sheinbaum and the Morena Party in June, her mentor, President AMLO, and allies are likely to secure a two-thirds majority in Congress, providing him the power to unilaterally amend Mexico's constitution. Before leaving office on October 1st, AMLO's supermajority is planning to implement 18 constitutional reforms that would weaken Mexico's economic regulatory landscape, degrade its investment climates, that's what we care about, dissolve checks and balances, and undermine the country's ability to fulfill international commitments, including the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. If approved, these legal shifts could seriously challenge North America's long-term competitiveness and nearshoring potential, jeopardize billions in U.S. and Canadian investments in Mexico, and complicate the 2026 review of the USMCA. Now, we're not going to get super wonky and read all of these, but they do outline, obviously, the aforementioned judicial reform amendment. Then there is the elimination of oversight and regulatory agencies. But then here's the big one, folks. This is the one that you really need to know. State energy industries, big bold letters toward the bottom of that paragraph. This policy would undermine U.S. and Canadian economic interests and any energy they produce in favor of Mexico's CFE and its state-owned oil and gas company, Pemex. Well, there you have it. Talk about burying the lead.
Yes.
There it is. There it is. Same old story. They want to control their resources and have that money go to enrich their people because it's publicly owned. And we're like, but wait a minute. As they write, Canadian and U.S. firms have invested a combined $34 billion in Mexico's energy sector, including significant investments in renewable energy projects. How woke How woke.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
there he
notice
is.
that. Notice how they put that in at the end.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. Of course.
They
Look,
want
this is not
they
about
want you to know it's not all about ripping that bad oil out of the ground.
It's not about the 34 billion. It's about the environment. It's about the environment. We're trying to save the environment here. What are you doing? So yeah, before we went on air, Russell said, this is like when John Gotti got beat up in jail. Everybody knew the golden age of the mafia was over. Well, when they tell the ambassador here, just go get your fucking shine box, keep your mouth shut. Oh, you don't like what we're doing? That's nice. Shut the fuck up. That's a great flex. Good for them.
Yeah, this would never have happened 20 years ago. It probably would not have happened 10 years ago. It is John Gotti getting a beating in prison. Right. This is the entire world saying to stay with the mafia parallel. As Frankie Five Angel says, you don't even have that kind of muscle anymore.
Yeah, or to put it very literally,
get your fucking shine box.
Yeah. Yes, the U.S. does not have that kind of muscle to impose its will in that way. And hey, increasingly, there is a counterweight to U.S. influence called BRICS.
Yep.
That I think you're going to see more and more of our neighbors to the south starting to join. This is, come on, man. I mean, we stole half of Mexico from Mexico. They never forgot that.
They'll join BRICS, and then we'll give them the Ukraine treatment. We'll do what Putin did to Ukraine, proving our point all along.
Right, exactly. Which, I mean, we already did in the Mexican-American War. We took the entire Southwest from Mexico, and while up here we say, they must have forgotten about that. No, they did not. No, they did not. That was their introduction to the new Republic of the United States and how it deals with its neighbors. This is literally over a century of resentments boiling over. And finally, this is the thing when you're the neighborhood bully. What happens when the bully stumbles? Oh, all the people have been waiting for that, right? All the people you bullied, all the people you forced off their land, all the people you genocided, all the leaders you assassinated. Those people didn't forget that. We might have. Most Americans never learned it. Forget about it. But they remember. They've been waiting. And hey, our neocons, they know that. That's why they're trying to gin up World War III. They're trying to bring this all to a head because they believe that with the advantage in arms that we have, we can win that fight. And they're willing to risk World War III to maintain that hegemony into the indefinite future.
Yes. Well said. Good point, Charles. Candace Strike, thanks for the $5. Yay, yes, we are on. China Shill says it's still morning for us on the best coast. That's right. Over on the West Coast, it is still the AM hour. You guys get a nice leisurely morning show. You didn't have to wake up at 5:30 to catch us this morning. Over on YouTube, we got some super chats. JM with a thumbs up for $2. Thank you for that very much. The Raging D-Head for $5 says unity is key to defeating the monster. That's why I watch you guys and Jimmy. Differences quickly get cast aside when we all have a common enemy. Well, thank you. That's a nice compliment. Appreciate that, and I agree. I agree so much. I'm going to put a heart on that one. See, now because I watched this in the YouTube back end, I could heart the ones that I really like. Catchy new DNC chant, lock us up. I like that too. Yes, lock us up. I like that. That's funny. Tim Canterbury, thanks for the €15. In any AI model, there's a tolerance level or acceptable error rate to avoid false positives. With Lavender AI, the IDF removed the tolerance level and let the machine guns loose. Yeah, that is true. We covered that. That is a really eerie story. Yep. And you guys should check out. We've said this in the past. We should try and get them on. The editors of that Plus 927 magazine. I don't know what Plus 927 means. Is that like the area code of like Tel Aviv or something? It was an Israeli indie media outlet that broke that story. Like the only 4 based people in Israel started an online site, and there's some terrific stuff on there, and that article was one of them. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $9.99 super sticker. Appreciate that very much. Okay, why don't we move on here? This is another fun story. That first one was so fun. I almost think I almost don't want to do the rest of the show. I feel like we're going to bring down the mood. But this is a fun one, too. This is a fun one as well. Chad Wolf tweets out, is Kamala Harris's new campaign ad promoting President Trump's border wall?
Shameless.
Yeah. Does she now support constructing a border wall? Numerous images of steel bollard designed a wall with an anti-climb plate atop, designed and constructed under President Trump. So Kamala is now trying to position herself as hawkish on the border. And so she put out the following ad. And yes, very noticeable in this ad are multiple shots of the Trump border wall that they seem so offended by just a short period of time ago. So here's the ad.
Caerus has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president,
there's one shot of the wall. Did you see that? All right, so here, let's see how many. Let's count how many times it appears.
Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking.
4.
Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
All right, so 4 appearances in a 30-second ad of Trump's border wall. And, yeah, I mean, he highlights that there. Wasn't lost on this tweeter here. This is why, despite the many stumbles of Donald Trump over this past month, the race is just so winnable for him. Because on the 2 most important issues on voters' mind, inflation and immigration, it's just impossible for Democrats to make an argument. As far as inflation, the rate of price increases has slowed to about 3% now. But that doesn't mean prices are going down. It means the rate at which they're going up has slowed. But of course, at the end of 2023, they were already way up from Trump-era pricing, even taking out the disturbances of the pandemic. Like, go back to 2019, you can't even really account for that in that formulation. It is just incredible how much more shit costs now. So there is no argument that makes sense from a political standpoint for the Democrats on that issue. There's just no way to trick people into thinking that groceries are more affordable than they are, as much as they try and spin it that way. And on this issue, as you can see in this ad here, 4 appearances of Trump's border wall in 30 seconds. The Democrats have completely conceded this argument to Donald Trump, so much so that Trump's position on immigration is now the center. And that is really a remarkable shift from 9 years ago when he announced his candidacy. Don't forget, folks, the birth of Trump derangement syndrome, the genesis of Trump derangement syndrome, was the Trump Tower speech where he said they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some I think are good people, right? That was the first time when everybody was like, can you believe he said that as a candidate for office? Wow. That was just so out of bounds. That was far to the right of the Overton window. Don't forget, Mitt Romney lost in 2012 largely because he tanked with Hispanic voters, 25% of the Hispanic vote. And the consensus in Republican circles is that he, Mitt Romney, was too hawkish on immigration. So for Trump to go out and say that was just completely crazy, to the point where most Republicans, remember Fox News was dead set against Trump in the early days of that primary. They're like, no way can we nominate this guy. Talking like this, you'll never win. Cut to 9 years later, that's the center. That's the center. The Democrats have given the issue to him. So between inflation, where there's nothing they can say at all, and this issue where they are just punting and giving him the win, that keeps Trump in the game no matter what. No matter what.
Well, with inflation, they just keep claiming the economy's great and, stop down talking America.
Right.
Basically, they're reformulating Hillary's
America is already great.
They're just
You can already
reformulating
afford bananas.
Yeah, you are you living in a box? Well, some of you, but you're not voting anyway because you don't have an address to register. But the rest of you, America is great. Yeah, they're just doing that. This is why for one thing with this, it really demonstrates, and I think we've seen this very starkly over the last 8 years at the least. Yeah, man. I mean, for people who really see themselves as Democrats, like that's part of their identity, they don't have a line. Like they don't have politics. And this is just one more example of it. There's absolutely nothing that you could message to them that they weren't being told to despise the day before, that they won't then do the double think on themselves. No, we were always for border security. No, we were always for a wall. It's very Orwellian. We always wanted a wall. What do you mean? We were always trying to pass sensible border legislation. There is no limit. There's a genocide going on all over social media, all over the corporate media to an extent that is honestly surprising. That's how bad it is. You can find a lot of places like CNN doing legitimate reporting on the conditions in Gaza. So you know about it. This isn't just on consortium news, which you've never heard of. And yeah, there's absolutely no limit. When you push Democrats on this, they'll feebly say, well, what am I supposed to do? Vote for Trump? That's all they can say. That's all they can say. So if genocide is not your limit, you don't have one. And if you can be told one day Donald Trump is a monster for his border wall, even though Bill Clinton advocated for a wall or a fence, so did Hillary Clinton earlier in her career, that was already a flip. That was anathema because Donald Trump proposed it.
Right.
Now the next day Kamala's proposing it. Yep, she's going to be tough on the border. These people are fucking mindless. They are mindless to an extent that is every accusation is a confession. It's often said when Democrats call Republicans mindless, it is a confession. There is no, hey, we have no investment in either team. I'm not biased towards the Republicans, but I am telling you from my personal observation and interactions, there is no more mindless group in the country than vote blue, no matter who Democrats. None, bar none.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you were to do a word cloud in, tied to Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, what is the one word you associate most with Trump? Yeah. I mean, racist, sexist is number one amongst the lib crowd. Number three would be wall. Like that's it. That was the metaphor for his campaign that year was the wall. That was it.
To actually put it in your campaign ad
4 times in a 30-second ad.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. That was supposed to be so stupid, right? It was a medieval idea. It was so dumb. You can't keep people out that way. Why is it in your fucking ad then?
And it wasn't like incidentally in the ad. They had shots where the sun is piercing through the wall, right? I mean, like it had a featured role in that ad.
Well, it's the same thing with the tips. And I did look into that. And yes, Kamala Harris did cast the deciding vote on taxing tips.
Yeah.
Now she's against it.
Yep. All right, let's take some more Rumble rants and super chats, and then we got a couple of great segments that I'm excited for that Russ is going to steer the ship on. Hillary Hinton, thanks for the $1, says you guys should sell DD signature anal tampons. Yeah, might be hard finding a vendor for that. It's hard enough finding a good vendor.
We gotta reach out to our Chinese friends.
Yeah, maybe when you go to China next year, you could find a factory.
I can get a manufacturer, I am planning on going to the Uyghur province.
Yeah, there you go.
And there's a lot of manufacturing there.
Yeah, a lot of manufacturing there. Lock Me Up DD t-shirts. Yeah, that would be a fun one. Lock Me Up. I like that. That's clever, too. Bonzo Beans. Thanks, Bonzo Beans, for the donation. Shasimi Seductions. Hey, it's been a while since we've seen you here. Welcome back, and thank you for the $9.99. Absolutely awesome DNC coverage. Felt like I was there. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Workers Strike Back event. So inspiring, even for a charcoal black-pilled cynic like me. Were you satisfied with Jill Stein's answer on failing New York ballot? I'll let you answer that first, Russ. But I do have a slight addition to that, which we should actually put that out on Twitter and on YouTube also. We spoke to Jason Call, her manager, who just approached us voluntarily because not to cause any internal strife over there, but he seemed dissatisfied with her answer, and he wanted to sort of fix it up a little bit
and try to polish it up a little bit. I think that, okay, I believe that she genuinely didn't know that Diane Sayre made the ballot. One thing you learn when you're in this space is we assume that everyone knows everything that we're talking about, and it's really not true. It's really not true. Very often, it's big conversations online are not reaching a lot of people you think would know about them. Like, unless she's a great actress, that was a genuine reaction. She legit, I think, did not know that she got on the ballot. So that was interesting. In terms of the reasons behind it, I mean, I asked her if she thought there was infiltration, which she didn't say no. Like, I mean, she basically said maybe, more or less. That was the upshot. Look, we hope to get her on for a more in-depth conversation. I wouldn't say her answers were great, but I didn't feel like she totally dodged it either, the way some folks might. Like Cornell, I actually talked to him also. Cornell just dodges. He just dodges. He's very much the politician. Like, now I've asked him questions twice, and both times he's very good at dancing his way around what you asked him. With his, he does his Cornell shtick. Yes, we're on the ballot in 46 states. Like, he'll just say shit to take it away from the question you ask him. She did not do that. She answered the questions I asked her. Are they satisfactory? I still have the core questions that I have and reservations about the Green Party. And honestly, I wish I didn't. What do you think? It's easy to get up here and dash people's hopes and dreams 3 times a week? I would love it. And I'm sure Keaton, even within his black Sauron-like heart, would love to tell you all, yeah, man, we're going to get behind Jill Stein. We would like to have her on, and we've reached out to them for a statement on RFK. I saw she actually tweeted something out about it at this point.
She did,
like a little thing about it. So hopefully we're gonna talk to her more. So let's put it this way: on a scale of 1 to 10, I give that a 6.
I would give it maybe 5 or 6. I think that's fair. I'd probably go more in a 5 category. But just to clarify, so what Jason Call, our campaign manager, came up to Russ and said after is that they were not prepared as much as they should have been for the New York ballot drive. He said it was a failure. I'm not going to make excuses for it. We should have had it together. We didn't, and that's on us. That to me
his
is a
answer
great answer.
Was better.
Like, that's a great answer. When you fuck up, you got to just say we fucked up. That's what accountability is about. You need accountability within these movements if they're gonna, build any sort of like discipline to succeed. And so, he gave a good answer. And I said, look, I think part of the reason why the LaRouche organization succeeded where the Greens failed is because the LaRouche organization has very low turnover in terms of like staff, in terms of personnel. Like, when they make a mistake one year, they can learn from it and fix it next year. The Greens don't have that. It's a new team every 4 years with the Greens. They don't have the same candidates. They don't have the same people. They don't have the same staff, managers. Right. Jason Calls this is his first campaign with the Greens. Like, when people are coming in and out of there, when it's such a revolving door, how do you learn and grow from? You'll end up making the same mistake every 4 years because it's the same people. It's different people making them. right? You don't have the same team in there to actually like learn and fix things. So yeah, those were those answers. But thank you for that. I'm glad you enjoyed that coverage. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $2. Kamala's bringing joy to the border. Yes. Like that. Thanks, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. Grandpa Caligula, I like that screen name. Thanks for the $5 on YouTube.
That's awesome.
Yeah, bringing joy to the border.
I'm gonna feel that.
Well, Kamala's appeals to Republicans. Yeah, there you go. Will Kamala's appeals to Republicans even work? People who want border policies are going to vote for the actual Republicans. They're not going to trust the Democrats. I mean, I think they feel like they have to compete on those grounds. I think their strategy now is to basically say that they were willing to secure the border and that Trump killed their bill for political reasons. Now, obviously, that's not true because they didn't need that border bill to pass in order to secure the border. But that's what the Democrats' line is going to be. What the Democrats' line is going to be is that Trump would rather have a political win in November than actually allow the House Republicans to vote for the border bill so we can get this done. That's going to be their line. Now, is that going to work to the extent that it erases Trump's lead on the issue? No, but they're hoping if they could cut into it a little bit, that it will help them on average, which I think it will. So I think it will be marginally effective. I don't think it's a complete fool's errand. I think they have to try and close the gap on the border because inflation is really beyond anything they can control. I mean, people know what shit costs. Like, there's very little messaging you could do about inflation that's going to put people's minds at ease. People are reminded of inflation 5 times a day, right? The border, there's still some room to bullshit people, and that's what they're going to try to do. Yeah. So that would be my answer.
Now, inflation has slowed down, way down, but prices never went back, and people's wages did not go up in a way that can even come close to compensating for that new price point on everything.
Exactly.
People are just much poorer in their real lived experience and their real financial experience than they were 5 years ago. They just are.
Yes, that's absolutely true. All right. Speaking of economics, we got a segment here. This kind of fell in our lap. This has been one of our beats these past few months, and this story kind of went viral over the last day or so. Shake Shack to shut 6 California locations. Go ahead, Russell.
All right. So if you all remember my stint on Jimmy's show, while I was there, this wage increase hit. And I am a big fan, probably to the detriment of my waistline while I was in LA, of In-N-Out Burger. And I would attribute at least 10 of the 20 pounds I gained out there to In-N-Out Burger. And I kept going and showing how the lines were down the street for In-N-Out Burger.
I think it's time for you to start to seriously consider salads.
Well, I did.
You did.
Upon my return. But yeah, it, you know, and I kept having a lot of back and forth. And this is when I first coined the phrase, de-peasantize your mind. And some people took that so hard that I got tagged in this story on X. People wanted to bring it up. See? All right, listen. Once again, we are going to go through this story and we're going to show you why this is the headline, why this is what you've been led to believe, and also why, particularly I think for men, you've been trained to think that hating workers is masculine, but that's masculine signaling, that makes you tough. That makes you a tough guy. Oh yeah, see these workers? You want to be tough? Go after the CEO, man. That guy's got money for private security. These workers don't. You want to impress me? Go after the people who created these conditions. But we'll get into that.
Because don't forget, folks, the headline could just as easily be, 37 Shake Shack locations remain in business in California,
and
despite the minimum wage hike.
And that's exactly what I said to the guy who to me, who I don't mean to, somebody tagged me in a comment respectfully, like I'm not attacking that guy.
I'm not coming at you.
I'm not coming at you, but he's the one who actually brought this article to my attention. So I appreciate that. But, and then, I gave him a little bit of the information I'm now going to give to the rest of you. So Let's take a look at this. Let's dive into this. Shake Shack will shutter 6 underperforming California locations, the latest fast food chain to close restaurants after the state enacted its controversial $20 minimum wage. The burger chain, which will close 9 Shake Shacks overall, said the move was a result of a periodic evaluation of its portfolio of company-operated units, according to a filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission on Tuesday. Now, that's important. Why? These are not franchise restaurants that they're talking about.
Right.
These are company-operated units. So how this company is doing, how this company compensates its executives, how this company's stock price has performed this year are all completely relevant to the closure of these stores and why they made that decision. Quote, these shacks are not projected to provide acceptable returns in the foreseeable future, the filing said. 5 of the doomed locations are in the Los Angeles area and another is in Oakland, lowering its total to 37 in the state, where wages for fast food workers shot up to $20 an hour on April 1st. Now, let me just note, in my research, it said there were 44 Shake Shacks in the state, so I'm not sure if that information is wrong or if the New York Post is wrong. So there are either 37 or 38 left in the state. Doesn't make very much difference in terms of illustrating. It's a very small number of these restaurants that are actually closing relative to the whole.
Right.
If what you're arguing is that this increase in wages was going to create this devastating apocalypse of these fast food restaurants, well, that doesn't really make that point, does it?
Right.
Especially when, as we will see as we go, these workers aren't even fired. Talk about burying the lead. The company said its decision was based, quote, in part due to changes in the trade area, according to its filing. Shake Shack declined to comment further on California's $20 minimum wage law when contacted by the Post. It's the first time the chain will close restaurants for purposes that were not construction related, a spokesperson told trade publication Restaurant Business, which first reported the news. The other closures include 2 in Texas and 1 in Ohio. Okay, so they close other unprofitable stores, and certainly Texas and Ohio are not known for their worker-friendly wages and policies. Aren't only closing stores in California, but they're closing more stores in California. 1 in 11 Americans live in California. It's an enormous state.
Yes.
Shake Shack said it expects all 9 locations to close their doors by September 25th. Employees at those restaurants can be rehired at other Shake Shack locations. If employees do not want to transfer locations, they will be eligible for 60 days of pay. So you understand, these employees are not even fired. They can transfer to other locations and make a $20 wage instead of a $15 wage. And frankly, even if that were not the case, if you asked me, is it better to have 6 stores closed so that the workers in the vast majority can make something more like a living wage? And keep it, $20 is not even really a living wage in California. You're still scraping to survive. I would say yes. I would say yes, particularly if that's going to have an impact on wages across the labor market. And hey, if you have a business model that requires that employees not be able to support themselves, guess what you have there, buddy? You have a failed business model.
Right.
Being able to afford to live needs to be part of your business model. It is a quirk of capitalism that we think that is an acceptable price to pay for what exactly? Freedom? Talk to me about your freedom when you're living in a van.
Yep. And if they don't want to transfer, they have 2 months full pay to find something else. Right.
Right. This does not exactly sound like a fast food apocalypse. These workers are not even out of work. These workers did not even lose their jobs. So how devastating could the impact of this be if they're offering to hire them at that wage at other locations? Like these locations were probably already struggling. Otherwise, why aren't they closing all of them? Why just a few of them?
Right.
The company, which has 330 locations in the U.S. and more than 180 abroad, said its closures will maximize growth and will not impact plans to open stores in those areas in the future, according to the filing. California's $20 minimum wage hike has forced several major chains, including McDonald's, Burger King, and even low-cost favorite In-N-Out Burger, to jack up prices to offset the higher wages. Now, that was one of the things I showed when I was out there. I think the cheeseburger went up by like 15 cents. Now, I understand it's more than that now, maybe 25, 50 cents. Okay. I mean, is that a price you're willing to pay so that thousands of workers can have a living wage? You're not talking about everything went up double. Everything went up by a third. Things went up, particularly at In-N-Out. I don't know about McDonald's and Burger King, which are already have inflated prices since the pandemic in states that did not increase their minimum wage. McDonald's here in New York, we don't have a $20 minimum wage. Man, to get like a Big Mac meal is like freaking $18, $20. It does. You have this runaway inflation. So why are you blaming the wage necessarily, particularly when people in states that have had no wage increase are all complaining about the prices at McDonald's?
Sure.
Many had to cut employee hours, and some have fast-tracked to move toward automation. Rubio's California Grill closed 48 of its nearly 134 locations at the end of May, citing the rising cost of doing business in the state for the closures, and filed for bankruptcy in June. I say to you once again, if your business model requires that you pay people starvation wages, what you got there is a failed business model. And let me ask you, folks, you ever eat at a Rubio's California Grill? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Don't blame the workers. Nobody wanted to eat at your fucking shitty restaurants. That's not the workers' fault. That's your fault. You have a failed business. Earlier this month, recently hired CEO Rob Lynch said he didn't want Shake Shack to appeal to, quote, only the highest income burger eaters. Instead, he said he wants the brand to become a Friday night staple for the family. He argued the company needed more drive-through locations to tweak its perception as an urban walk-in restaurant. Lynch took the helm in May after stints at Papa John's, Arby's, and Taco Bell. Same-store sales rose 4% in the second quarter. Hang on, I thought these wages were devastating the company. The second quarter, that's already that wage increase. I believe it went into effect in January. So that's the first quarter. Now you're well into the second quarter. That well after that wage increase went into effect, same-store sales rose 4%, mostly due to higher price points. Traffic. We're going to take a look at where else they could have gotten that money from than the consumer. Traffic dropped less than 1% during the same period. Hang on, I thought people were going to stop going to these restaurants. I thought they can't afford them anymore. The chain's shares are up 43% so far this year. Shake Shack has a market capitalization of $4.45 billion.
It's a lot of milkshakes.
It's a lot of milkshakes. It's a lot of cheddar. Okay, so hey, credit where credit is due. The New York Post, owned by billionaire Rupert Murdoch, clearly has as much to do with the fact that so many people have a peasant mind about workers and wages as any outlet, but they did include that. They could easily have not included the fact that their shares are up 43%. So I appreciate that was in the article. So this is the problem, folks. This is the problem. You think we can hear the baby, Keaton.
Okay.
So this is the problem. Pete can still hear the baby.
I know. I'm setting the mic. I'm adjusting the mic.
All right. People think that we live in a world where simple mom and pop shops make profits based on costs of labor, costs of input, and then sales and the money taken in at the register. They think everything runs like Lucy's lemonade stand. And that is why you've been taught, some people have been taught, to hate workers asking for more wages, because you think that's all that's going on in the economy. And of course, you're going to bankrupt the lemonade stand. When really, this is how things work. You see, the worker keeps trying to get that football, and the company keeps yanking it out from under them. So what do I mean by that? How can we demonstrate that? Well, let's take a look at the pay scales at Shake Shack. All right, so now this is from 2023. This is before they hired the new CEO, but I think we can safely assume that the new CEO is not getting paid less, right? Probably getting paid more. So, but let's just go with the 2023 numbers. All right, so Randy Garutti was making $3,557,446. Chief Operating Officer, $1,357,223. Chief Financial Officer, $1,438,088. Now, to put that in perspective, the median employee pay at Shake Shack is $21,454. So the CEO makes 166 times the money that the worker does. So what you need to ask yourself, if you're getting angry at workers for asking to not starve or not have to crash in their mom's basement when they're working full time, who taught you to get angry at the worker and not at the CEO? Why isn't the headline of the Post, Shake Shack closes store while CEO makes 166 times the wage of company worker? Why isn't that the headline? Because they have trained you to hate yourself. They have trained you to hate your own class, and particularly with men, they have used your need to assert your masculinity. They have turned that against you and coaxed you into directing that against other workers. They have coaxed you into thinking that hating workers and hating people asking for a living wage somehow makes you a guy, makes you a real man to beat up on workers and talk about.
Because I'm willing to work 70 hours a week to keep ahead of my rent check by 4 days.
That doesn't make you a man. That makes you a peasant. That makes you a peasant. That makes you somebody who's been brainwashed by these people to hate yourself and to never look at them as the cause of your problems, to always be fighting amongst yourselves. And frankly, that's what all the culture war shit is about too.
And one more thing, I'll say that, but go back to the last piece there. What is it, $21,454? Keep in mind, Shake Shack is like kind of bougie as fast food places go. It's like one of the, like, you don't have Shake Shacks, in like too many rural areas. They tend there's a lot of them in New York City and Los Angeles and major cities.
Like it's in hipster areas of Brooklyn.
Exactly. It's in hipster areas. It's not upscale as food goes, but it's upscale as fast food goes. It's trendy.
Right.
And and they tend to have locations in expensive, trendy cities. Which means $21,000. I mean, that is pennies anywhere. It is less than pennies in New York City. In Los Angeles. Yeah, I mean, that's not. I mean, you may as well not work at all. You may as well just fold up and take a, whatever, food stamps, whatever. I mean, that is how low that is.
Yes, and making the argument, well, get a better job. Okay, well, you need people to do this job, right?
Right.
So you're saying you need people to do this job, but you're not willing to pay people to do the job that you need them to do. Again, that is a failed business model, and this is the point I keep making. This is why I keep going back to the lemonade stand. It's not the lemonade stand, okay? It's not that simple. Look how much money this guy makes. Look how much money the executives make. There is that money in the system. They just don't want to give it to workers.
Right.
When the workers asked for more pay, they could have cut executive compensation, but they don't want to do that.
Right.
And it gets worse. We'll look at their earnings report in just a bit. All right, so this is what the board of directors gets paid. Why do they get paid that? They get paid that to show up to vote a couple times a year. Look at this. These people make over $100,000 to show up to a couple of meetings. Anybody here make that kind of money to show up to meetings? Okay, so here's someplace else you could find that money.
Jake, but Jake's not here today.
Jake's the only one.
Yeah,
Jake's the only one. That's why we're so downscale in our production values. Jake is sucking up all of the money.
LA. Yeah,
that's it. We would. Yeah. All right. So Shake Shack as a company, and again, remember, these locations they're closing are company-owned locations. These are not franchisees. So the revenue of the company is very relevant to that. So God, man, Shake Shack, they're getting devastated, right? They're getting decimated by these crazy workers and their revenue for the second quarter is up 16.44% year over year. This is after that wage increase, fully after that wage increase, the second quarter. That's March through June. Net income, $9.67 million, up almost 40%. Almost 40% year over year. How could they possibly pay workers more?
Net income, not gross income, net income.
Net income, profit.
Yep.
Earnings per share are up 43.75%, and that is really what this is about. It's about the shareholders. Because if you have stores that are underperforming, it brings down the average per store sales. And then when you do your earnings report, it doesn't look as good to Wall Street. And then maybe you take a hit on your stock, right? It's all about juicing the stock price. That's what I mean. It's not the lemonade stand. There's this whole thing going on here where the entire economy has been financialized and they're looking at pleasing Wall Street. It's not about simple store sales. It's also about perception of store sales. They are going to make decisions to juice perception on Wall Street that this is something to pour money into to juice the stock price. As we saw during COVID, at this point, Wall Street is a casino. It's completely divorced from the real economy. What's bad for the real economy is good for Wall Street. And there's nothing they like better than less workers, less payroll, higher per store sales numbers. That's what that's about. Net profit margin, 19.14%. That's pretty healthy, man. Sounds like you could afford to pay people more than, what is it, $21,000 a year, the average?
Yep.
Operating income is up 110%. Net change in cash, that's their cash on hand, $41.64 million, up 146.4% year over year. Now, cost of revenue, now that's the increase in their operating costs. Now, the increase in their operating costs is 14.13%. So that would account for increase in wages, but it also accounts for the runaway inflation that we have, particularly in the food sector. But even so, it doesn't nearly begin to catch up to the increase in the net income, the increase in the earnings per share. Right. They're doing just fine. They're doing just fine. So I want anyone who is still in our audience, who read that headline and said, see, everyone told you this was going to happen. This is the point we were making when we were on Jimmy's show. And then we did some segments about it on our show. This is the whole side of it they're not showing you. This company is highly profitable. They can afford to pay workers more money. Outlets like the Post are teaching you to beat your own ass. They are teaching you to go get the stick from the backyard to beat your own ass with, because if you start going after them, instead of beating up on other people in your class, well, now they got a problem. They got you right where they want you, man. Doing their work for you. Doing enforcement against your own class. Demanding that your own class not ask for more in the face of runaway profits. Not just for this outlet. There's a crisis in restaurants, right? I know there are a lot of right-wing sites that are telling you this. It's total fucking bullshit. And I'm going to show you that right now. All right. So Investors Business Daily. This was after they reported their last earnings. This gets a little more into what we were just talking about. Shake Shack stock vaults as earnings jump as restaurants rebound. That's not like the shit you're hearing on those grifter YouTube channels, right? About collapsing restaurants. That doesn't match that, does it? Shake Shack reported a 50% increase in earnings to 27 cents per share adjusted, matching FactSet estimates. Total revenue surged 16.4% to $316.5 million to beat forecasts of $314.4 million. Operating income more than doubled to $10.8 million from $4.7 million last year. Same-store sales rose 4%, as the Post pointed out, ahead of views of 3.2% growth. Shake Shack reported that system-wide sales grew 13.5% from last year. Wow. And this is with half the year having the most populous state in the country with this $20 wage. During the second quarter, Shake Shack opened 12 new company-operated locations, 3 of which are drive-thrus. That brings the total company-operated openings to 18 so far this year, with 2 new locations opened in quarter 3 so far. Well, this doesn't sound like a company that's struggling to make its nut, does it? Shake Shack said its performance in the first half of the year puts it on track to reach its 2024 targets. Okay, so in spite of this $20 wage in California, where it has all of these locations, huge number of its domestic locations are in California, they're on track to reach their targets for the year. Didn't even knock them off their business plan. The New York-based chain guided expectations for a full-year revenue increase of 14 to 15% to range from $1.24 billion to $1.25 billion. Shake Shack also expects to achieve positive free cash flow on the year for the first time since 2017. Shack shares are up 38% this year. 38%. It's not just Shack. Listen, you have all these videos, right? Oh, the restaurant industry is collapsing. These wages are out of control. Among other restaurant stocks, Chipotle Mexican Grill jumped about 7.3% off lows for the week through Thursday. Papa John's International rallied nearly 8% in that period. Sweet Green, Starbucks, First Watch, and Cava Group also scored notable gains. All right, so now finally, one last point I want to make. People talk a lot about failed economic systems, socialism, capitalism. These are failed economic systems. So
communism,
if you
mean, that's what they usually say.
What did I say?
You said socialism, capitalism.
Oh, yes, I meant communism. All right. So if you heard that communist country or socialist country had 16%, it's about 6.5 children, about 1/6 of children living in poverty. If you were told that, you would say, well, that's a failed system, right? Well, that's our system. That's our system. So as Keaton often points out, well, okay, you can't say these things about communism. And I have my criticisms. Anybody who's watched the show regularly knows I have a lot of critiques of communist theory. But they also have a lot of good points in terms of their critique of capitalism. So if you're going to say, perhaps with some justification, that this system doesn't work, well, if you're going to go so far as to say that communism doesn't work, you have to say capitalism doesn't work, don't you? Because look at this. Look at this. How many children living in poverty? And what does that do to children to live in poverty like that? Growing up poor has wide-ranging and long-lasting repercussions. Poverty elevates a child's risk of experiencing behavioral, social, and emotional and health challenges. Child poverty also reduces skill-building opportunities and academic outcomes, undercutting a young student's capacity to learn, graduate high school, and more. And I'm also going to tell you something from my own research. People who grow up in poverty are almost 4 times more likely to commit suicide or to, well, self-delete. It's a little late now to self-delete later on in life. Now, in terms of the culture war, this is why they want us fighting over trans kids, which no matter what you think about that, nobody would say that that's a large portion of the population of children, right? I mean, most people say what, 0.05% maybe at best. If they really care about children, why aren't they talking about the 16% of children growing up in poverty? Why are they talking about, well, these children are more likely to commit suicide, which there's no strong data to support that, by the way, if they don't get these treatments, because they know that people feel a need to get involved in something bigger than themselves. People feel a need to be involved in a cause. They do. They feel a need to have some kind of moral cause or compass in their lives. And if you are going to psyop people into not at all having any class consciousness, not at all having any economic cause to champion, because to focus on that 1 in 6 children living in poverty is to start to examine. You can't do that without examining the system that created those conditions. And they don't want you doing that. Well, they need you fighting about tampons in the boys' bathroom. That's what that is all about. It is an elaborate psyop. If they really cared about children, they'd be talking about the much larger portion of children living in poverty. And frankly, if you look at the numbers, throw that up one more time. I think I have that on there. If you look at what they consider poverty, that number of children living in real poverty is far greater than what this is saying. Because look at how they qualify it. A family of 4 with annual earnings below $29,678. So probably this number could be double that. I would say it's probably double that if you're talking about real poverty. You're really experiencing poverty, because that's an absurd number. That honestly, in New York City, that would be very low income for a single person to be making.
Well, yeah,
that number. So I would say it's probably at least 25%, probably higher than that. That is what all the culture war shit is about. It is to give people a channel to focus that human impulse to want to help. I think a lot of people who get sucked into this, most of them even, they mean well. They're told this is the cause. Children are suffering. People are suffering. You need to get involved in it. These CEOs love it when you're fighting about tampons in the boys' bathroom, because every minute you're spending doing that is another minute you're not asking why the CEO of Shake Shack is making 166 times the worker. That's why these things are front and center at the DNC convention. And on the other side, taking the counter side, that's what we saw at the douchebag dialogues. The anti-woke, it's the same grift. It's the other side of the same grift. Any conversation but a conversation about the way the system works and impoverishes people.
Well, yeah, and just on the individual side, when it comes to people rooting against rooting against higher wages, I think there's a psychological component of it where people want to feel like their situation is okay. It's okay. Our situation is okay. So yeah, I mean, it seems unfair that the CEO is making 166 times what I'm making, but I guess this is the only way that works, quote unquote.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, they could pay me more, but that doesn't work. Then the prices would be expensive. Then they'd have to close the store. And, look, they could have Shake Shack. It could just very well be that maybe it just wasn't worth it to keep those LA locations open. Maybe I'm sure they were solvent. It's not worth it. Hey, I wouldn't put it past them to say, hey, we can get a major PR victory out of closing 5 locations.
That's another thing.
We'll close 5 locations and we'll blame it on the minimum wage increase, because who knows, they might raise it to $25 an hour in 2 years. And we want to fire a shot across the bow. Hey, look, we just had to close 5 stores because you raised it up to 20. So don't go raising that again, right? Could be a good investment, because they know that the media is mostly going to echo that sentiment. And that is why, foundational to every left that has any success whatsoever is labor. organized labor, because it's up to you to go and get what's yours. And, you know, in workers' cases, you have to demand it. They're not going to give it up without a fight. And so, yeah, I mean, that is just one example of a story that just caught fire. I mean, that story was everywhere on Twitter yesterday. And just the headline alone, just to go right back to the top, we're not going to do the whole thing all over again, but 37 Shake Shacks remained open statewide, despite that wage increase.
Or 38, depending on which number is correct.
Depending. Well, I saw 37, but yeah. All right. Well done. Ken Texican, Netanyahu's next campaign slogan, we're going to complete this genocide. We're going to get America to pay for it. That's right. Thank you, Ken Texican. Let's get a cowbell for Ken Texican for $50.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Never eaten at Shake Shack, but I'd take a Whataburger over an In-N-Out burger 6 out of 7 days of the week. On the 7th day, I'd rest and have pizza at Lee's Tavern on Staten Island. Well, Whataburger, that's big, like in Texas, right? That's like a Texas chain.
They have them out there.
They
So
have
a
them out there, yeah.
couple of people told me, I should have tried it. But yeah, the In-N-Out burger, I don't know, man. I had it for the first time when I first went out to LA, and I guess it just made an impression. I'm not saying there's no better hamburger. You know what's great in New York? And this place has been there since like the 90s. Joe's on 2nd Avenue. That is my hamburger recommendation in New York City.
Okay. I have not been. All right. Let's move some coffee for our friends at Rumble, shall we? Here we go. Have you heard of the recent advertising scandal? I'll break it down for you. You may have heard of this if you've been watching our show. We've been talking a lot about free speech online recently. The CEO of Rumble, Chris Pavlovsky, recently released an email from Inspire Brands and Dunkin' Donuts. And that email explicitly states the right-wing culture of Rumble is too polarizing. So in other words, Dunkin' Donuts has a problem with, quote, right-wing culture and wants nothing to do with it or Rumble. So the solution is to stop buying products that don't support free speech and start supporting brands that do. The competing coffee brand that we should all get behind.
Donuts that are gay.
Yeah. The competing coffee brand that we all need to get behind is Rumble's 1775 coffee. So for a limited time, Rumble is offering buy 2 bags of coffee and get 1 for free. That's buy 2, get 1 free. Go to 1775coffee.com and enter promo code what? Promo code Duncan. That's right. Rumble has good troll game. Promo code Duncan, Dunkin, to get this limited time deal. That's 1775coffee.com, promo code Duncan. All right, beautiful. That one is done. In the bag. Give it a chalk. Eric Cousseau over on YouTube for $2, enjoying the final season of the U.S. Empire with your popcorn and your soda. Thanks, Eric Cousseau. Eric Cousseau also for $5 says, wokeness killed the U.S. Empire show, and it doesn't look like it will be picked up for a new season. John Fries for $5, we need a combination of free healthcare, free education, rent control, and full retirement combined with a living wage. Tax the rich and cut military. Yes, thank you. Hillary Hinton says, do you like Phil Collins? I've been a big Genesis fan ever since the release of their 1980 album, Duke. Invisible Touch is the group's undisputed masterpiece. It's an epic meditation on intangibility. Never listened to much.
About The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
Never listened to much Genesis. I don't feel strongly about them either way. Alrighty. We have sort of a sister segment to the Shake Shack piece, if you will. Another Labor Day oriented segment.
Yeah, this is really like our big special Labor Day show. It just worked out like that.
A week before Labor Day.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead. All right. All right, throw it up. Okay, so some people will say regarding the minimum wage hikes on fast food restaurants, well, that's not supposed to be a career. To which I would say, if you're working full time, you should be able to make a living. And if your business model does not allow for that, you have a failed business model. That's one. Two, a lot of people who are going into working in fast food and places like that, in the past, they would have worked in factories. Now we've been deindustrialized. Those factory jobs don't exist anymore. And if you know the history of labor, they unionized so that those factory jobs eventually became good jobs that you could raise a family on. They are attempting to do the same thing with the fast food industry because, for good or for ill, those are the jobs our economy is generating at this point. But here are people that I don't think anyone would say they want high turnover amongst. If you fly on planes, among their responsibilities is not just to bring you your little duty-sized bottle of wine, but it's also to help you get your oxygen mask on in case of an emergency. Flight attendants are facing homelessness and hunger. Kay had already worked a full day when Frontier Airlines called her to pick up a shift. The recently hired flight attendant had been awake since 4 a.m. driving Lyft, one of the few side gigs she could manage with her unpredictable schedule. Her new career was off to a rough start. There were 3.5 weeks of unpaid training. Her first few paychecks were lower than she'd anticipated. She gave up her apartment in Atlanta, where median rent is about $1,500, and had been renting a room from a friend. The only way to make ends meet, she said, was to juggle all the gig work she could find: Instacart shopping, pet sitting, Lyft driving. The rideshare company was offering a $500 bonus for completing 120 rides in 4 days. With her projected pay of $23,000 a year before taxes and insurance, that's only a little better than Shake Shack money. Yeah. Chasing the extra money felt necessary. Hang on, I thought this was all about whether the job was a career or important or for high school kids. There's flight attendants making the same money, almost like it's a function of capitalism.
Yes, and most minimum wage earners, by the way, are 25 or older. It's a myth that it's teenagers' first job.
Right.
A majority, 55% are 25 or older.
A lot of single mothers, too.
Yes, the average age of a minimum wage worker, which is the mean, so that's not the median, but the mean, because, yes, a lot of single moms, is actually 35.
Right. So after
15.
Not 15, right. Maybe back in 1958, it was. So after working for Frontier from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., Kay turned back to Lyft. By the time she reached the bonus, she'd gone nearly 24 hours without sleep. New flight attendants like Kay learn that although their work has been deemed essential to the transportation infrastructure, it's hard to stay afloat. A complicated pay structure that prioritizes hours in the air and entry-level wages that are on par with service industry jobs makes it difficult for many to turn the job into a career. Quote, "I have to supplement my income, but then I'm also not sleeping," said Kay, who spoke on the condition that she be identified only by the name she uses outside of work because she fears retaliation from her employer. Quote, "We're expected to save people on the plane, and we're not getting paid a living wage." Now, I want to ask you, honestly, if you were told that the flight attendants in China have to go 24 hours without sleep because that's what they make them do, what would you say? God, that's horrible. That's a horrible system. Well, that is what our system is producing, and that's dangerous. We had the two railroad workers on here during the strike, and they were talking about how the company is so greedy. You've got two workers for a mile of train, an entire mile-long train. You got two guys working. Does that sound safe to you? Does that sound safe? Does this not sound like a safety issue that you have a flight attendant who's expected to help passengers in an emergency who hasn't slept for 24 hours? That's dangerous, right?
Of course.
Kay is not alone. Most new flight attendants work on reserve, spending days waiting to be assigned flights. It's common for them to take side jobs: bartenders, semi-truck drivers, makeup artists, church musicians. Some say they are struggling to feed their families and are living out of their cars. In interviews with 18 current or former flight attendants, workers recounted dire financial situations, assault on the job from unruly passengers, and mental health crises. They shared similar stories, paychecks much smaller than expected, quickly falling behind on bills, spiraling into debt. For decades, Hollywood and media have glamorized flight attendants for a fast-paced, globe-trotting lifestyle. In reality, their story mirrors the income inequality in other global industries that rely on blue-collar workers. Last year, homelessness in America was at a record high and appears to be worsening. So our illustrious Democratic candidate is wrong when she says that we shouldn't be maligning the great economy we have, talking down America. The industry may be at a turning point. This summer, flight attendant unions have made progress in years-long battle with airlines over better wages and retirement benefits, among other issues. Tentative labor agreements have reached the bargaining table, but not been voted through by union members. Threats to strike keep coming, even if an actual stoppage has to be approved by federal mediators. America's largest flight attendants union, the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA-AFA, said in a recent news release that many members working with Alaska Airlines have reported financial insecurity, including some that have experienced homelessness, lived in their car, lived in a shelter, or endured some combination of these circumstances. An employment verification letter from American Airlines showing a projected starting pay of $27,315 per year recently went viral, with some calling it a poverty verification letter that could be used to apply for government assistance programs like food stamps. American confirmed the letter reflects the current base rate for first-year flight attendants on reserve without premiums or incentives. Quote, as a passenger, you don't really see those things, said Rebecca Owens, a flight attendant with Alaska Airlines. You see the smiling, happy flight attendants that are doing anything to survive, but still bringing their best selves to work. It's a lot to really comprehend. And here, we see the starting pay at different airlines and what the top rate pay is. So Frontier, $22,950, JetBlue, which because they have an all Airbus fleet is my only choice for domestic travel. But some of those flight attendants are getting $24,255. And the most you can ever make there is $58,167. And I didn't include this, but the article is pretty lengthy and it gets into detail. To get that top pay scale usually takes about 12 years.
Yeah, and that's not enough to live. And by live, I mean like live with a modicum of comfort and be able to save a little bit of money to someday improve your economic prospects, which is the whole sell of capitalism. Capitalism is about expansion. It's about growth. It's about opportunity, right? But that is for the capitalists. That is not for the laborers. That's not for the laborers. That's why it's called capitalism, because the way to win at capitalism is to get capital and use capital to create more capital. People who work for an hourly wage are not capitalists, and capitalism is not designed to benefit them. You are not actually a part of the system. You are the stuff that capitalists use to feed into the system, and when they're done, they spit you out. In the article we went over with Shama Sawant, because her demand is $25 minimum wage for Workers Strike Back, the cheapest state in the country to live in is, I believe, either North Dakota, Wyoming, like, you know, one of those very rural states that I don't recall exactly which one. But the least expensive state to actually live and be able to save a little bit and improve your situation is $80,000 a year for a single person.
Right.
So what? Top rate. So basically what you're saying is if you serve peanuts on an airplane or you help people get their face masks on an airplane, if something happens with the cabin pressure, whatever, you do not have access to the American dream. That's basically what it is. Right? This system is for the few people who actually use capital to create more capital. If you work for a living, the system is not designed to benefit you. It is not designed to benefit you. This is not a failure of the system. This is a perfection of the system over the course of hundreds of years, where they have been able to shut workers out and make workers grateful for the fact that they've been shut out somehow.
Well, this is a return to form. You had this brief period where after the Depression, after the New Deal, where workers had more power than they've ever had in the history of the world over their working conditions. And gradually, the capitalists are clawing that back. They have clawed it back, and it's been very much the frog in the pot of boiling water, going back to Reagan firing the air traffic controllers. That's when this peasant shit happened. That's when this peasant mind happened. Because I remember I was precocious. I was very young, but I was precocious enough that I still remember this because it was everywhere. It was very pervasive in the media that people were cheering the firing of the airline.
Yeah.
Like people had already kind of been set up to think that way. You know, you go back, I would love to do a video essay on, Death Wish and Dirty Harry and all that, the way these things were really setting up that reactionary mindset. Because you look at a lot of the monologues they gave those characters in these 70s vigilante movies, and it's like you're listening to a Bill O'Reilly monologue.
Right.
Like they were really setting people up for that. I always remember this. There was this Clint Eastwood bare knuckle boxing movies, Every Which Way But Loose, and then the sequel was Any Which Way You Can. And in Any Which Way You Can, Sandra Locke was the love interest. And she says, I don't take handouts. He says, handouts what the government gives you. I'm offering you a hand up.
Right.
Like the whole Fox News mindset was being implanted. And then with the Reagan Revolution, it exploded. Like it's funny. If you go back and you look at that now, you say, well, they should have seen Reagan coming. Like it was clearly that kind of a backlash against the Great Society was brewing in the zeitgeist. It was just waiting for a figure to really enact it. All right, so that is so Delta apparently is not unionized, and I guess because they want to keep the union out, they pay a little more. But it's still nothing to write home about. Time outside of flying hours, the time spent at the airport boarding and deplaning, is either unpaid or paid at a fraction of the hourly rate. Now, this is like people who work in restaurants where the setup is not paid. You got to go in there and set up the restaurant. Now, Delta, one of the reasons their pay scale is higher is because they pay half the hourly rate, which is princely compared to the rest of the industry for that time.
Right. For
quote, it's pretty common to work 6 hours of flight time, but you're actually working for 12 to 14 hours, said Rich Henderson, a flight attendant of more than a decade who runs the Two Guys on a Plane meme account with his husband. We have a lot of time at work we don't get paid. The system is legal. Flight attendants and other aviation workers are exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act because their job is essential to the economy. Hedrick says the practice started a long time ago. When flight attendants came into unions, quote, we just started getting paid the same way as pilots did, she said. Several flight attendants who spoke to the Post say they're angry that they make less than they would working comparable hours at a fast food restaurant, despite their extensive safety responsibilities, regular training, and demanding lifestyle. Quote, this is a problem across the country, Nelson said. The basic standard and social contract that if you work full time, you can get a living wage, healthcare, retirement, and actually have time to spend with your families, that has been eroded in the airline industry, the same as it's been eroded everywhere else. The median pay for airline and commercial pilots is $171,210. Last year, Alaska's CEO made more than $10 million. The CEOs for Delta and American each made more than $31 million. AFA is currently bargaining with 14 carriers over flight attendant contracts. So just like in the fast food industry, you have CEOs being paid hundreds of times more than these workers while claiming that they're not making enough money to pay people properly to do these jobs. This is what people have to understand. This is what I mean when I say depeasantize your mind. People have been conditioned, again, to think the economy works like a lemonade stand. It does not. It does not. It works like a big Ponzi scheme where the people at the top, the investor class in Wall Street, are sucking up all of the wealth to themselves. It's not that the money is not there to properly pay people. It's that people have been so beaten down that they have forgotten how to demand that money. Power will concede nothing without a demand. You must demand it. These workers, frankly, should go on strike. You could cripple the nation. You could cripple the world economy if they went on. They can't fly without flight attendants. They have that power. Workers have been so conditioned at this point not to take those actions, but they have to. They have to. We have to return to that kind of militant labor action across all industries. This is not just fast food. It's not just quote unquote burger flippers. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And the more you blame workers for asking for more, the worse they're going to make it, until you're living in a Japanese style convenience hotel as your apartment with a bed and a TV.
Yeah.
And then you'll be complaining about the workers who want a bathroom.
Yeah, no, look, for people who thought I was a little bit too dark and blackpilled a couple streams back, which I don't really consider that to be a dark prediction for the future, by the way. The United States as a political entity no longer wielding the kind of power or influence over the world. I actually think that's a good thing, but that's a conversation for a different time. If you want what I think is absolutely necessary, there needs to be at this point a general strike. That's the next big thing that the left should try to organize, a general work stoppage. Because you come up with a list of 5 core demands: minimum wage increase, free health care, slashing of the military budget, arms embargo to Israel. You can come up with anything. They don't have to be labor oriented. I mean, obviously, most of them should be, but they could be. We're not going to work until Israel is cut off. No more weapons. Until then, a third of the workforce is not showing up. Well, you'll see these politicians cater to they'll cave pretty quickly. They'll cave pretty quickly when their money is on the line. And so that is what we need. That is my strong feeling. That you really are not going to be able to fight back against this without that. That is necessary.
Right. And people ask a lot, what are you for? Well, that is what we are for. I think.
And if that fucking Barney Rubble looking motherfucker over there at the UAW is serious about organizing one in 2028, then yeah, I mean, it's going to take all hands on deck. You know what I mean?
Yes. And this is why we're very often asked why we don't get behind this electoral project or that electoral project. Again, we'd love to, but our experience, and there are behind the scenes things that I can't talk about, but my experiences have done nothing to disabuse me of my basic notion about a lot of these political parties, movements, and candidates.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
That is our experience, and that is why we don't get behind anybody, because it's our energy needs to go towards things like this.
Yeah. Yeah, there needs to be a general strike, 100%.
That Shama really speaks for. That's why we've always supported her insofar as we support anybody. That's why we'd like to go cover the conference she plans on having in February. But I think a lot of these things, I'm sorry, man, they enrich their principal figures. A lot of these people are millionaires who are in those positions without naming any names. And, there's no reason to encourage our audience to get involved in things like that when their energy could be better. Hey, we've encouraged getting involved with Worker Strike Back.
Right, of course.
We're not blackpilled like, no, don't do anything, just sit and die. But you have to be strategic. There are a lot of efforts out there that are more cosplaying than real.
Agreed. All right, folks, we are going to take a quick game break here to show our Patron supporters up on the screen. If you like what we do here, you can help us do more of it by becoming a member at our Patreon, patreon.com/DoDissidents. You could also join our Substack or our locals. So the links for these are as follows: patreon.com/DoDissidents. You can also become a paid member at Substack, dodissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals. You get your name up in lights here on the patron scroll. You also get call-in access to our weekly Q&As on Rumble after the Sunday night shows, and you get bonus streams. We just did a supporter live stream on Tuesday night. It was a lot of fun. We unraveled the mystery of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the severed whale head. And we also took a look at Max Blumenthal's epic trolling backstage at the DNC. Those episodes stay up forever. So, folks, you are able to watch those episodes. You can watch the entire back catalog of supporter streams. That was our 30th last night. So, signing up for $5 a month now, you get 30 episodes of supporter streams that you can access. You can have yourself a marathon, a dissidence and chill with your significant other if you sign up for just $5 a month. And starting, I think, next month, we're going to do our monthly film club where we do movie commentary and discussion, a monthly movie night on Rumble. So that will be a ton of fun. So if you can join, please do. It helps us out tremendously. Let's take some more Rumble rants and super chats here. Ken Texican, somewhere buried in all this not-so-complex fast food eco-scam mystery is a bare-naked ladies video. Pinch me. Thank you. Indeed. Let's see. China Shill, you must show constant growth under capitalism to simply make profit is not enough. You must make double what you made last year, then double that again. I'm sure that's sustainable. Yes, it is about infinite growth. That is true. Absolutely, China Shill. 100%. Ken Texican, Russell's front and center point was spot freaking on. There you go. Thank you, Ken Texican.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Which one was that?
Front and center. I forget. We've been making quite a few points.
We've been making a lot of
afternoon.
points.
We make a lot of great points. We've been saying a lot of great things today.
People are saying they've never seen a podcast like it.
Never seen anybody say so many great things in one show. It's incredible. No one's ever seen anything like this, really. Kyle Wool on YouTube, thanks for the $5. Labor Day is on May 1st, comrades. I'll give you a heart for that. That's May Day. That's right. This is the Americanized Labor Day here coming up. But still worth something. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. That's not supposed to be a full career, quote unquote, is a person's way of saying, I'm a snob and I look down on you and disrespect you and your job. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Quintessential, thank you for the $5. It's true that in the U.S., federal government can't force states or counties to build housing, so expansion depends on outnumbering NIMBY homeowners in non-Fed elections. Is that true that the federal government can't force housing? Is that true? Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. That's an interesting point.
They can't force what?
They can't build like federal housing. That can only be done at the state level. Is that true? I don't know.
I don't think so, man. Because aren't there federal housing projects?
I thought. I mean, I don't know. I never thought of that though. Maybe. There
I mean,
are.
what about HUD? It's a federal agency.
That's true. That's a federal agency. That is true.
I mean,
Sparky,
maybe they give
Sparky's
the grant to the state to build the housing, but it's the same effect ultimately.
Right. Yeah. Sparky, good to see you, man. The war on unions, thanks for the $10, and the war on small business are part of the war in the middle class. Those air traffic controllers were big Reagan supporters in the 1980 election, so they really felt betrayed. Thank you, Sparky. Pete Sweet, thank you for the $10. Right on, retired UAW member here. Dem Party abandoned working class after 72 presidential loss. Yep. Union leadership allowed it and ushered in NAFTA and WTO. General strike is the only language that corporations hear. Yes, I agree with that. 100%, my friend. Appreciate that. What do we got here? Andrew on Rumble, thanks for the $10. Headed to New York, Midtown, man. First time I'll try the Nona Slice. How about sit-down Italian, a good pastrami sandwich? Well, I mean, Katz's is really the pastrami sandwich place. It's a touristy location, but you know that's one of the few examples of a place that's touristy because it does happen to be the best. I mean, it is the best one.
It is the best pastrami sandwich in town. If you really want to suck up the real old school Lower East Side ambience, though, I would recommend 2nd Avenue Deli. If you really want to do the whole thing.
Good Italian restaurant. Look, man, if you want that very like American Italian, like the manicotti and that kind of shit in a ceramic plate, I really like De Gennaro's on Mulberry Street in Little Italy. And it also has the virtue of formerly being the site of Umberto's Clam House, where Crazy Joey Gallo got whacked.
Was killed, that's right. Yeah. I never eaten there. I think John's at 12th Street's pretty good for like a table, like a sit-down kind of like old school place. Most of my favorite sit-down Italian places, though, were in Brooklyn, not in Manhattan. So, yeah, we gave you 2 recommendations there. And then what was the other one? I think that was it, right? Sit-down Italian. Yeah, and then the pizza, obviously. You got the Nona there. So, yeah,
I mean, really, you know what's good? I partly like De Gennaro's because of that history. But the current Umberto's Clam House is across the street, and that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I love the guy who used to hawk tables out there. Oh,
he's still out there. Last I saw, he was still out there.
Skinny guy with the salt and pepper hair.
Yep.
You know, they stand out there with the menu. They say, we got chicken parmigiano, we got a pizza, we got a this, we got a that. So I used to do food tours on Mulberry Street, and so I would pass him all the time, and he would be hawking tables, trying to,
and then the winter, he wears that big fur coat.
Yeah, the big coat. Yeah. Trying to highlight menu items to get people inside, right? So this one day we were doing this tour. It was hot as hell. It was like high 90s, humid. I mean, everybody's drenched in sweat walking around. So he's out there in front of the restaurant saying, water, we got cold water. We got cold water inside. Come on, we give you some ice cold water. Today I'm just going to hawk water. I think that'll sell best. Yeah. That is...
Well, the founder of Umberto's Clam House, what was the name of the guy, man? He was the guy who started gay bars in New York.
Oh, interesting.
Because gay bars used to be a mob business because they were illegal under the vice codes.
Right.
At the time of the Stonewall riots, Stonewall was a mob joint.
Well, interesting. I see. I didn't even know that. All right. We are going to...
Matty the Horse Aiello.
There we go.
That was the name of the guy. And his family, last I knew, still ran Umberto's Clam House. And for a while, because Aiello got indicted, they had to have the feds keeping the books. Probably not at this point, but Umberto's, yeah. They had to have feds, like, basically running it.
Interesting. All right, we're going to read this ad because this is actually an important one. Rumble actually feels pretty strongly about this for good reason. So let's do this one. This is a good one. So this sponsorship is from Rumble and one that is important to the survival of their company. So when Rumble first started in 2013, they built a platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have any biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally, which they still do to this day. We are living testament to that. Free Palestine crazy lefties that we are. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on issues like COVID. But they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration in the letter just published this week. Rumble did not fold to such pressure. They held the line, and they are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France. They are attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers as they don't get much of it. So watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask for you. But if you really believe in this fight, and if you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. So if you join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech, Rumble is offering $10 a month with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription to Rumble Premium, which is the ad-free version of Rumble. So that is rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Rumble.com/premium, promo code STUDIO. So if you have the means and you believe in the cause, now is the time to sign up at Rumble Premium. And if you don't have the means, we're just happy to have you watch us over here anyway. But that's rumble.com/premium to sign up. Promo code STUDIO. So Rumble, they launched their own version of like YouTube Premium where you can, for a few dollars a month, you join with no ads. And so they're trying to push that now. And so
let me tell you, man, I mean, because we just covered the story the other day. We'll probably get into it Sunday. We'll see what the developments are. The French government just went and charged the Telegram CEO. Like this is not a joke. We're very happy at the way our Rumble audience is growing, because there are real legitimate concerns that you're gonna. I've been saying this for a while. Hey, YouTube could just decide these kinds of shows are more trouble than they're worth.
Of course.
And just stop hosting these shows.
Of course. Of course. I mean, we hope that doesn't happen. Obviously, we love being on YouTube. We love being on Rumble as well. But we premiered our interview, our full-length interview with Omali Yeshitela yesterday.
Yep.
YouTube plays favorites. YouTube suppresses certain stories. That Omali Yeshitela premiere of the full-length interview on YouTube, as of right now, I'll give it to you right now. I'll give you the numbers. I have it. On YouTube right now, that Omali Yeshitela interview, the full thing, with which we premiered yesterday afternoon, has 2.8 thousand views. 2.8 thousand views in about 24 hours. On Rumble, that same video, which we premiered at the exact same time, is up to, let's see, 51,000 views versus 2.8 thousand on YouTube.
And this is part of what is awesome about Rumble, because if you do what we do, you do the fun story so that you can promote Yeshitela, so that you can promote causes like that.
Our
and when you
DNC
go on
protest
Rumble,
coverage, we had 400,000 views on that coverage.
Right. I mean, Rumble, they're not suppressing us. And on YouTube, particularly, why do you think you didn't see more coverage of Assange being freed? Because it was suppressed on YouTube. It was. Anytime you throw in Assange, Yeshitela, there are certain things. Honestly, I even think Shama is suppressed, because we've done videos with her that didn't do what I thought they would have organically done. It just doesn't make sense, particularly with the audience that we have.
Right.
Like, why would it perform like that? So they absolutely suppress, particularly the kind of stories that we feel most passionate about.
Yes, of course. And so
we had a viewer, and Keaton responded very well, very kindly. We had a viewer ask why we're doing ads. Well, that's why. That's why we are trying to YouTube proof the operation. And that is a very small ask from Rumble for what they're giving us.
They're not suppressing us, they promoted our DNC coverage. 400,000 views on the Free Palestine protest. 50,000 views on the Omali Yeshitela interview. Just, they put us up on the homepage, and part of the arrangement is we use their software, or not their software, but their streaming system, and we read a few ads. So we spend 4 minutes, a show for a 3-hour show. That's it is vital to maintaining a free speech media infrastructure.
Not just on our side, on their side. I mean, they got to make some money.
Yeah, they can't do it for free. No. Yeah,
that is the
legal
system we
too.
live in. Until we get Rumble to help us overthrow capitalism.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's going to be a tough lift.
We're
as long as Donald Trump Jr. has a
negotiations
show
with
over
them.
there. Yeah, exactly.
Does he?
But, he does. Yeah.
We should have him on.
We should have him on. Yeah, we should do a multi-stream. We'll pitch him that Shake Shack story. I'm sure he'll love that. All right. Let's turn our attention, folks, overseas. Very, very troubling news. Of course, Israel launches largest raids in occupied West Bank in at least 20 years. Israeli forces launched a sweeping military operation Wednesday in the occupied West Bank, carrying out airstrikes and deadly raids and sealing off the city of Jenin. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz said the large-scale operation was part of a full-fledged war, as he compared the situation to the Gaza Strip, saying Israeli forces must implement similar measures being carried out in the war-torn Palestinian enclave in the West Bank. But wait a minute. No chickpeas, shall we say, in the West Bank. That's what's going to be the code name, chickpeas, because people say hummus. Well, what is hummus made from? Chickpeas. So that's what we'll say. That's a good YouTube word for them. Chickpeas. Yeah. Everybody knows what we're saying there. No chickpeas in the West Bank. So what do you mean similar measures have to be taken? At least 10 people were killed and almost 24 injured, according to the Palestine Red Crescent Society, an emergency service. Israel has conducted near daily raids in the West Bank, which has been occupied by Israel since 1967 in the months since chickpeas, there for those who didn't know. There you go. Hamas is October 7th, and the subsequent Israeli offensive in Gaza. But Wednesday's operation could be the largest in more than 20 years, when what Israeli officials called Operation Defensive Shield was executed during the Second Intifada or Palestinian Uprising. The IDF, the Israeli security agency, also known as the Shin Bet, and the Israeli police said in a joint statement that forces had launched a counterterrorism operation in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Al-Farah refugee camp overnight, quote, eliminating armed terrorists from the air and ground. They said 3 armed militants who posed a threat to security forces were killed in an airstrike in the area of Jenin, while 2 other armed militants were killed in Jenin and Tulkarem, which are about 30 miles apart. Israeli authorities said a number of wanted suspects were also apprehended, along with a number of weapons. Israeli forces exposed and dismantled explosives that were planted under the roads in the area and were intended to be detonated in attacks against the security forces operating in the area, the statement said. Images and videos shared on social media and verified by NBC News showed Israeli bulldozers appearing to destroy roads in Tulkarem and Jenin overnight. Israeli authorities said their forces also launched air raids in the area of Al-Farah refugee camp just over 15 miles south of Jenin, in which Israeli authorities said 4 other armed militants were killed. So here are some of those videos, just a couple of those videos, which surfaced online and then were then verified by more mainstream outlets. Here is the destruction of a street. They do that under the excuse of, well, there were explosives under the street. What do you mean under the, how? Also, let's take a look at this. This one is the more egregious one. Last night, Israeli forces destroyed 2 main roundabouts during a raid into the West Bank city of Jenin. Does this look like a counterterrorism operation to you, or does this look like destruction of the infrastructure to make a place unlivable, which oddly enough is a violation of the Genocide Convention? Look at this.
Oh yeah, that roundabout looks suspicious.
Yeah, that was one
it's
roundabout.
Coming right at us.
Yeah, here's the other one. I mean, who are you going to believe? You or your lying eyes? You're going to tell me this is a counterterrorism operation? What? What are you talking about? Digging up the roads, destroying the roads, and dismantling this kind of infrastructure? But of course, they'll just say it. They'll just say it. That's all they got to do. All they got to do is keep talking. NBC News continues. Kamala al-Rub, the governor of Jenin, said on Palestinian radio that Israeli forces had surrounded the area and blocked off exit and entry points, as well as access to hospitals, the Associated Press reported. The staff at the hospital was later allowed to move freely after facing severe restrictions by Israeli forces, according to Medical Aid for Palestinians. Israeli forces raided homes in the Nur Shams camp in Tulkarem, searching from one house to another and detaining men found inside, according to Nihad al-Shawish, the head of services at the camp. All access roads to the camp have been destroyed, al-Shawish said. Israel's operation in the West Bank, one of 2 Palestinian territories occupied by the Israeli government, still raised fears of forcible displacement among the Palestinians. Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah.
U.S. Barami told NBC News he could see the camp being surrounded by the IDF from his home less than 2 miles away in the town of the same name. The Palestinian Authority employee said his mother-in-law, who lives in the camp, had told him that Israeli forces were surrounding her house. He added that he was no longer able to reach her over the phone. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa's office said in a statement that any incursion into hospitals was a direct threat to the lives of patients and medical staff. Israeli forces had blocked entry roads and besieged multiple medical facilities across the West Bank, the statement added. Katz made the connection between the raids in the West Bank and the war in Gaza. Katz said Israel must address this threat in the same manner as we deal with terrorist infrastructures in Gaza, including the temporary evacuation of Palestinian residents and any other necessary measures. This is a full-fledged war, and we must win it, he added. Katz also said that the IDF was operating with intensity in Jenin and Tulkarem to stamp out Islamic Iranian terrorist infrastructure. So there you have it. I mean, just right from their mouth, they're going to do the same to the West Bank as they are doing in Gaza. Now, the West Bank is a much bigger territory, and maybe they have to tread lightly by comparison because obviously there is no Hamas presence in the West Bank, and so they can't as easily claim that this is all about self-defense. But you heard it right there. They approach this the exact same way. Now, there's one more article that we're going to read a little bit of in just a minute. But do you have anything, Russ, while we're paused?
Well, this is what we've said all along. They're taking advantage of the opportunity. There is an opportunity here. The United States has clearly signaled, no matter what the outcome of the election, that there will not be any restraint put on Israel to the extent of continuing to send billions more dollars, more weapons to Israel. So there's not going to be any restraint coming from their primary benefactor. This is what they've wanted to do for 76 years, liquidate this population by any means necessary, and they're not going to miss the opportunity. Their objective is to ethnically cleanse, even through means of genocide, the population of the West Bank and Gaza, and to claim that as greater Israel, to make that all Israel from the river to the sea, as it says in the Likud charter. They are not, this is a rare opportunity. Hell, we're already getting called genocidal Nazis. Let's just go for it. That's what they're doing.
Yep, indeed. We're going to keep going. U.S. imposes sanctions on extremist Israeli settlers in the West Bank. So the U.S. now has announced new sanctions against extremist settlers in the West Bank who are funded by the Israeli government as Washington steps up its attempt to rein in worsening settler violence. The new measures drew a sharp response from the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, whose office said it viewed them with utmost severity and that the issue was under pointed discussion with Washington. The sanctions target one organization and one individual with long involvement in the intimidation of Palestinians with the aim of seizing their land. The U.S. Treasury has made them specially designated nationals, which means their assets are blocked and the U.S. citizens and companies are prohibited from dealing with them. The targeted group was Hashomer Yosh, which provides security for illegal settler outposts, including some which have already been sanctioned by the U.S. The group has been particularly active in the South Hebron Hills at the southern end of the West Bank, which has been a focus of Israeli settler violence against local Bedouin inhabitants. After all 250 Palestinian residents of Kirbet Zenuda, a village at the center of the struggle for land, were forced to leave in late January, Hashomer Yosh volunteers fenced off the village to prevent the residents from returning, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said in a statement. Hashomer Yosh is officially a non-government organization, but it has been funded and supported in recent years by Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing coalition. The targeted individual in Wednesday's sanctions was Yitzhak Levi Filant, the security coordinator at Yitzhar settlement just south of Nablus. He, like other settler security coordinators, draws a salary directly from the Israeli Defense Ministry. Although Filant's role is akin to a security or law enforcement officer, he has engaged in malign activities outside the scope of his authority, Miller said. In February 2024, he led a group of armed settlers to set up roadblocks and conduct patrols to pursue and attack Palestinians in their lands and forcefully expel them from their lands. Netanyahu's office issued a terse and critical response on Wednesday night, saying Israel views with utmost severity the imposition of sanctions on citizens of Israel. The issue is in pointed discussion with the U.S. The sanctions will make it hard for the Israeli government to continue to pay Filant or fund Hashomer Yosh without violating U.S. sanctions, and will cut off direct funding from right-wing supporters in the United States. The new sanctions reflect mounting frustration in the Biden administration about the Netanyahu government's failure to contain settler violence, and the frustration is not confined to Washington. In a letter published last week, the head of Israel's Shin Bet security agency, Ronan Bar, wrote to Netanyahu and some of his ministers to warn them that violence by settlers' hilltop youth, unrestrained by the state, constituted terrorism and represented a severe national security threat because it was likely to drive a cycle of violence. All right, so you know what my theory is, and this is not a conspiracy because I don't think a conspiracy is required when interests converge, as the great George Carlin once said on Bill Maher's show. These extremist settlers may as well be a creation of the American state. I mean, they are somewhat connected to the Israeli government. They get money from the Israeli government, but this actually helps the Zionist project to have a couple of these guys step out of line so that we can come in and wag our finger at them and say, no, no, no. And Netanyahu can make a big show of how dare you sanction our settlers. So he looks like he's like sticking up for them. But meanwhile, we get to look like we're doing something about this when we're not. We're not. We're slapping a couple of quote unquote extremists on the wrist while business as usual goes on. There have been raids in the West Bank on an almost daily basis for the past 11 months now, according to that NBC News article, which we just read. So, yeah, a couple of bad actors, quote unquote, step out of line. It gives us the opportunity to look like we are keeping Israel under control when, of course, we're not.
Yes. The horrors coming out of Palestine since October 7th are just strain the mind's ability to take it in. It's at the point where a lot of it just doesn't even break through. Recently the father lost his twins. That was moments that really got out there. The good news is that Israel's economy and society are collapsing. The bad news is they're probably not collapsing quickly enough.
Fast enough, right.
For the Palestinian people. Just absolutely horrific. And our own complicity as a nation and the willingness of people to go along with these candidates who are going to continue to support this. I mean, we kind of boiled it down to this formulation, and on the Democratic side, that's really what it is. Genocide, free lunch, tampons in the boys' bathroom. Can overlook a little genocide. What's a little genocide?
Yep.
On the other side, hey, well, if they're gonna, put Fauci on trial,
right?
What's a little genocide?
Right. Exactly.
To your point. Look, most American people are just keeping their heads down and trying to survive. But in the abstract, that was really your point. Like, hey, does America really deserve a good outcome? Look at people who are willing to overlook genocide if they think it's in their interests to support this or that person.
Right. I mean, look at what our prosperity comes on the back of, right? And then think, do we deserve to sort of maintain our cushy lifestyles relative to the Palestinians, of course, when we have just shown as a whole such indifference to this? And, I will be quicker to clarify this time than I was last time. That doesn't mean I wish deprivation on average Americans. I'm saying as a political entity, if our economic model is contingent upon the exploitation, subjugation, and in this case, mass murder of innocent people somewhere else, well, who's to say our lives matter any more than theirs? Why should we be invested in good outcomes for ourselves? Why should we be invested in abortion rights here when mothers are having C-sections without anesthesia over there? What, those mothers matter less than our mothers here?
Right.
It's not that I wish harm upon our mothers here, but I'm saying you have to have some solidarity at some point, and if not now, when? If not now, when?
Well, and frankly, when the British Empire collapsed, when the French colonial holdings collapsed, that was when they were able to reduce their military footprint and put money into their society.
Well, that's a whole other point. That's a very important one. The NHS came into being post-World War II, post-British Empire.
Exactly.
Right? Once they said, hey, you know what? We're going to invest less money in keeping our boot on the neck of the rest of the world and more money taking care of our people. That's when you get those kinds of reforms.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Our friend Anish Shivani made that point to us a while ago. He says, if you don't have a critique of empire, all of these social democratic reforms that you advocate for seem kind of empty because A, what are they happening on the backs of? And B, an entity, whether it's, a nation or an alliance or anything else, an entity that is so obsessed with blood and domination is not going to treat its own people humanely. Chris Hedges talks about that too.
Exactly.
How we treat people around the world ultimately reflects how we view ourselves. Right. And so that's why I just have very limited patience now for people who are getting sucked back into the duopoly on both sides of this. I want to hear Eric Weinstein. Now, Eric Weinstein doesn't give a shit about the Palestinians anyway. But a guy like he goes on now my values might be reflected in a Trump presidency because RFK's on this trail. What the fuck are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? So anyway, that's that. Yeah.
To put a button on that. Or
yeah.
as we used to say in the old neighborhood, come on, funny feeling.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Keeping it classy like we do.
It was Eric Weinstein, right? I get them confused. I'm pretty sure it was Eric Weinstein.
Everybody does. And I am told now on good authority, yes, Brett Weinstein's a virulent Zionist too.
Okay.
And he has said so.
Don't they have the same scruff?
I don't know why so many people were trying to tell me no.
Oh, yeah, of course. Brett Weinstein. Okay, so there's him. All right, I know that guy. Now, who's the other one?
I mean, they look alike.
They look the same. They look the same. I can't tell the difference.
You can tell them apart. They don't look that much alike.
I mean, when I just look back, they look like brothers. I'll say that.
Yeah,
you can tell they're brothers.
Sure.
They don't look like twins. We can tell they're brothers.
Sure.
All right. William Brooks, thanks for the $20. This has been a terrific show. Thank you, William. Tons of evidence in support of the idea that capitalism is horrific, even under the best of circumstances. Thank you, William. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Sparky, thanks for the $10. When I was a kid in the 70s, seemed like half of newspaper articles had something to do with unions. That went away. Media helped push the downfall of unions. Yes, well, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. You hear a lot of that. You get into Thanksgiving conversations with a lot of these people. They talk about the unions and how corrupt they are.
Dude, look at movies and TV. You had Norma Ray.
Right.
Union leaders were celebrated. There was a TV show that was all about a steel union with Carl Malden, Skag.
That's right.
Like, can you imagine a TV show built on that premise, on the drama within the union?
Right. It's almost inconceivable now.
It's inconceivable. They were not in a million years.
The Milford, thanks for the $5. Paul's on 2nd Avenue near St. Mark's. Also, The Lamb Lies Down is a fucking masterpiece. There you go.
Oh, you know what? That's what I meant. Not Joe's, Paul's. That's what I meant. Yes, you know your shit. That's the hamburger place I was talking about.
Okay. I don't think I've ever been there.
That they just an enormous, like, old school hamburger. They make right on the grill in front of you. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. I like the, it's a fairly famous place. It was a decent burger. It's a nice place. It's a fun little joint. Corner Bistro in the West Village. They do a decent burger. But
I remember. I used to know people who worked there. Yeah. Is that still there?
I don't know.
It's I think that's gone. That's gone.
It's not surprising. I mean, it's like one of the few kind of like, cool sort of like downscale places you can go and like get a burger and a beer for like $12.
You're talking about the place off 6th Avenue there.
No, it's further west than that. It's off of 8th. Corner Bistro is like West Village.
I might be thinking of the wrong place.
Yeah. China show, we are heading to China in the 90s level of exploitation, except they were building themselves up and had a good goal when they paid that price. We are just falling backwards as they move forward. I'm assuming was the last of that. You ran into a character limit there on my end.
I'll see when I go there. I'm planning on going there in April. I'm judging the entire country, the entire history, the entire economy on their Mushu pork.
Hey, man, it looks nice. Like, you watch these videos of these Chinese cities, it looks like the future. Nice. They look like they're like 50 years ahead of us.
Yeah, there's a famous, I forget the name of it. There's a famous like steampunk city in kind of the middle of China. I think I'm gonna try to arrange to go there because it's not on the itinerary. of the tour group I plan on getting there with.
Ranger Biker, thanks for the $5. Top rate job breaking down wage and labor stories today, guys. Our vampire economy is obscene, despicable, and immoral. Its imperative is to splice into revenue streams and fuck workers.
Yep.
And let me see, you ran into another thing there. And fuck workers and consumers. There you go, Ranger Biker. Amen.
Thank you.
Hey, watch out. You don't get kicked off of Rumble talking like that. Ha ha. See? Hillary Hinton, Manducatus in Long Island City is the bomb. Luca Brazzi types at every table.
Oh, yeah.
Best carbonara around. Well, there's that place, the oldest, like one of the oldest Italian restaurants, the East Williamsburg. That was an old mob joint. Bamonte's. I never been there.
Never ate there.
Yeah, I never been there. I lived very close to there for a while, but I never went. Oops, sorry. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $1. You should partner with a really good populist right show on the Rumble to actually have a real populist left-right show that Breaking Points and The Hill Rising pretends to be. Yeah, that would not be a bad idea.
I mean, it would be interesting. Yeah, I don't know of any either.
The IDF is the most moral rapist army. Thank you, Eric. So, yes. Oh, by the way, we put this up by accident, but we should plug this. For all of our Southeast friends, you should join the Uhuru March this Saturday at 11 a.m. Go to handsoffuhuru.org/march. That takes you to the Eventbrite link so you can get all of the logistics. It's in St. Petersburg at the Uhuru House this Saturday. We will most likely be streaming it here. I just have to make sure they're going to have a stream of it that we can use. The difference between Republicans and Democrats is that one may promise you a reach around. It's funny. It's interesting, like on certain fronts now, I always thought of Democrats and Republicans as like good cop, bad cop. The Republican comes in, smacks you across the face, beats you up, and tries to break you down, and then he leaves. Democrat comes in with a coffee. Don't worry about my partner there. He gets a little angry sometimes.
Sure.
Now, in some cases, it's like reversing, I feel like. Now, I think the Democrats are almost becoming the bad cop in certain examples, like in speech, war. Like their convention was much more hawkish than the Republican convention. Like they're starting to sound even more dystopian.
I
much
mean,
more dystopian, in fact.
Honestly, this might open up some daylight between me and my partner. Honestly, with what's happening with speech, I am feeling more and more like you could make more of an argument for voting for Trump. Because I can't even imagine what's going to happen to platforms like Rumble if those fucking guys get another 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, that is a consideration, obviously. And like I said, I understand people have their considerations in terms of, lesser evilism and things like that. Kamala will bring joy to the genocide. Explosions of joy. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. MFA, thanks for the $1.99 over on YouTube. Appreciate that super sticker there. Kuznetsky Bassane for $1.99 says General Strike. Yeah, General. She likes the idea. Thank you, Kuznetsky. Try garlic in Midtown, says Nas M. Garlic in Midtown.
I've heard of that one. Yeah,
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. Political movie recommendation: The Candidate, Oscar-winning screenplay by Jeremy Larner, directed by Michael Ritchie, stars Robert Redford.
Yeah, that's one that I've been considering.
Yeah, that could be a good one. Brendan McNamara says General Strike. It's all fun and games until they charge you with economic terrorism for organizing it. Half kidding, but really, what do we do about it? Well, that's why it takes strength in numbers, that's what it's about. Tom, thanks for the $9.99. I have a friend in Pasadena who lives in HUD housing, but don't forget eminent domain. If the federal government really wanted to, they could seize land and build housing for people, but they don't want to. Thank you for that. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Jimmy Carter winning was a Watergate-caused anomaly. After Dukakis in 88, Dems got tired of losing, so they sold their soul to the devil. Thanks, Sparky. A lot of new material from Sparky today.
Dukakis was a new Democrat through and through. He just wasn't any good on the stump like Clinton. Look, he couldn't sell that like Clinton.
I mean, you could argue Carter was the first new Democrat.
Carter
really warred with the left faction of the party. Yeah,
he was the first, but in the pot of boiling water metaphor, it was on a low simmer with Carter. Yeah. Nothing like the full explosion
of course,
under Clinton.
No, absolutely. All right, folks. Let's move on. We got a couple more things. This is a quick one, folks. This is a woman from America who is now a settler in Israel, in Palestine.
God bless her.
Yeah, God bless her. And a UK news channel caught up with her in a clip.
Good shrimp scampi out that way.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. A UK news channel caught up with her in a clip that has now gone pretty viral. Over 3 million views on Twitter alone, not counting the other platforms where I'm sure it's spread far and wide as well. Here's an example of the kind of brainwashing that we talk about, folks. Here it is.
You coming from America to here, settling in potentially in Gaza, kicking Palestinians out. A lot of people would see that as settler colonialism.
It's not really colonialism, it's a return. My grandparents were kicked out of Israel by Arabs who were trying to establish a Palestinian state, and they had to leave for their survival, and I'm just coming back and fulfilling their dream. That would be the first thing. The second thing is, I think that, and I know this is a minority view, I think colonialism gets a bad rap. Like genocide is bad, but colonizing places that are genocidal and they have bad ideology, it's good to come in and correct their views.
What do you think should happen?
All right, it's good. And this is the dissident dialogue view. This is the intellectual dark web, new atheist view. Well, they're backwards. So we're helping. It's good for humanity to go in and correct their views, as she just says outright.
Well, this is the classic Western view overall.
Yes.
This is why the British would go in. They'd send in their missionaries, and you're enlightening these poor savages.
Right.
You're bringing them civilization. Meanwhile, in the United States, one of the biggest problems that is really not discussed very much in the history. One of the biggest problems the early colonists had was colonists who kept running off to live with the natives.
Right. Yep. She goes on. She's not done.
To the people who are already in Gaza.
So I think...
Hold on. We'll back it up a few seconds here.
Correct their views.
What do you think should happen to the people who are already in Gaza?
So I think that there's a couple of possibilities. The one that I think is the most realistic is we got to ask other countries for help. I know that Spain is willing to take a couple of million. I know Russia said they would take a couple of thousand.
Did a lot of people that would say they would take a couple of million Palestinians? Because I really doubt, given that Spain, along with Ireland, went to the EU to try to get the EU to cut off trade with Israel, that they agreed to take 2 million Palestinians.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, if you're talking about Gaza, that's pretty much the whole population of Gaza. Now, maybe she's talking about the West Bank as well, but they were talking about Gaza just a minute ago.
I am
so,
pretty
yeah,
damn
I don't
sure
know where she gets
Spain
those
never
numbers.
said any such thing.
Yeah, a couple of million. Yeah.
I was willing to take a couple of million. I know Russia said they would take a couple of thousand.
To a lot of people, that would sound like you're advocating for ethnic cleansing.
I don't think so, because Palestinian isn't an ethnicity, it's an ideology, and it's an ideology that says that they want Jews dead. And so,
first of all, you could not find a paler, blonder woman to ask that question to. Hey, it sounds like you're advocating for ethnic cleansing, right? Just the visual of this. Second of all, she has that completely backwards. This is what I mean by this is a brainwashed person. This is a person who has been indoctrinated into bogus theory. The only way you could say something that backwards is if you were brainwashed from your days as a young child, as her children there are going to be brainwashed when they grow up, unless this is intercepted non-violently, obviously, but unless there is some sort of breakthrough here. She says, to be Palestinian is not a nationality, it's an ideology. No, it's the exact opposite. Zionism is not a nationality, it is an ideology. And that's the ideology. Zionism is the ideology. To be Palestinian says nothing about your ideology. That is very much a statement of where you are from, where your ancestors have roots in the ground. Look at how unbelievably backwards.
Sound like you're advocating for ethnic cleansing?
I don't think so, because Palestinian isn't an ethnicity, it's an ideology, and it's
Palestinian isn't an ethnicity, it's an ideology.
Yeah, I'm much more tuned into the worldview of these wackos than I was before October 7th. So I believe what she's referencing. For one thing, they're very big on claiming that there was never a Palestine because they were occupied by others. Therefore, they never existed as a people.
Right.
And beyond that, the most extreme version of that is there are no Palestinians. There are fictional people that were made up in order to for the Arabs to counter Zionism. That there was never a distinct people with a distinct dialect and a distinct culture there. That it was an empty land,
right?
Even though we can clearly see the pictures of the cities that were there. We have Zionists describing when they first came in the 19th century. We have Ben Gurion describing people who were there. That's pretty funny if there was nobody there, that the first prime minister of Israel, the leader of the movement, describes the people who were there when he first went there, complains about Zionists working as employees for the Arabs who were there because he felt it would complicate their project of ethnic cleansing. He doesn't put it that way, but that's essentially the issue he had. He didn't want them fraternizing. It's
Right.
hard to ethnically cleanse people that you become friendly with. So like any cult leader, he wanted to keep them separate from the outsiders. But yeah, no, they say like the Arabs put a bunch of their unwanted excess populations there to cause problems, and then called them a people, but they were never a Palestinian people. That's where that comes from.
Yeah. And the level of indoctrination there, it struck me because, Russell, you were telling me that you had a friend who sounded just like this woman, and then you recommended the Tansura film to them, and that actually did snap them out of it. That's why I mentioned this, because this strikes me as a person who it wouldn't even occur to you to think about it a different way. If you could say something so absurd as Palestinian is not an ethnicity, it's an ideology, when literally you are a blonde white woman from Texas, I believe she's from Texas, coming on here claiming you have a divine right to be on this land, it would never occur to you that there is another side of the story for you to say something so utterly insane. I mean, that in itself is religious. It is so in defiance of reality. That is a cult-like opinion. And so, you had a surprising degree of success with one friend of yours who actually watched that film and said, hey, you know what? I feel differently now.
Yes. I'd like to tell you that's happened more than once, but
I'm surprised it happened once.
That is the
when
only
you're dealing
time.
with this, I'm surprised it happened once. When you look at a woman like this, it is surprising that anything could break through. And from how you describe your friend, it sounds like she was saying essentially this, which is just unquestioningly a white blonde woman wanders over from America. No, this is my home. This is my home. You're Palestinian. Well, that's an ideology. That's not an ethnicity. You go on to someone else's house and say that?
She goes, and the rest of the clip, she talks about how her people were driven off the land.
Right.
And this is why you need a court order to get a DNA test in Israel. Only in cases of paternity or health, you need a doctor's note, because these people are as descended from the Middle East as Kid Rock.
Right.
These people are not from the Middle East. I'm not from the Middle East. I've had a DNA test. We had a patron, actually. I don't know if she's a patron anymore, who called in with that bullshit. I know a doctor. Okay. Well, so even if you're right, you're saying that the amount of DNA of Jews that is descended to the Middle East is so minimal that it doesn't show up in a DNA test. You'd have to do some kind of splitting of the atom to find Middle Eastern DNA, so that justifies the occupation and genocidal intent of the Israeli people.
Right. Yeah. No, just amazing piece of video. An amazing piece of video that went viral, understandably. Obangadon gave a test donation. Well, came through good. Zionist cuck for $1 says Weiss. Is that a German or a circumcised last name? That's a German name. Weiss.
Weiss
Means
sure
white.
Does.
Yep. My real name for $5. Say both Brett and Eric Weinstein are pro-genocide. They have both mentioned their support in several podcasts. My own lying ears told me so. Thank you, my real name. Appreciate that. Let's see here. George Soros used his connections as a currency trader to help the CIA set up NGOs in Eastern Europe foment discord during the Cold War. He helps them to this day. Think Soros, think CIA. Thank you. Let's see. Gavin Hillock, thanks for the €5. Some Brits still say that the Irish aren't real and it was all just made up to spite them. This attitude doesn't die easily. I don't imagine it does. Thank you for that. Okay. Oops. Sorry. We have one more segment on the day. Russell, this is yours.
Okay. So, we've mentioned and other people have mentioned there's so much focus on Palestine and Gaza, and rightly so, but we've been trying to do better about illustrating a lot of the suffering going on in other parts of the world. One of those parts, we recently did a piece on the Congo, and Sudan is also facing a famine of Ethiopian proportions, if any of you remember the Ethiopian famine in the 80s. So this is Mark Anderson. Sudan's famine is already on par with Ethiopia's in the 1980s, The Economist reports. If fighting continues until early next year, more than 10 million people could die from starvation and related diseases by 2027. And here's another. Many in Sudan are wondering why there are constant protest marches for Palestine in London, but nobody ever says a word about the war in Sudan. 1 year of war has caused 15,000 killed, 230,000 kids risking starvation, and 8 million refugees. The forgotten war, and they're absolutely right. That's part of why we're doing this segment. Okay, so this is a bit of video of the conditions that some of the Sudanese are living in.
Moment in time, we need to see urgent humanitarian action and support here and for the future, because we expect more and more displaced people to arrive in this area. I'm here in Kamala State, and we're visiting a school that's housing 70 households who have been newly displaced from Sinjar. The conditions are quite appalling. There's no water at all. There are 4 shared latrines for the entire displaced community. When the community needs to go bathe or cleanse themselves, they go to the canal and or get water from the village. However, the water is contaminated. Right now, the community is eating beans and sorghum, so no vegetables. We met with a woman who delivered a baby while she was being displaced, and she's having trouble breastfeeding because she doesn't have access to the appropriate nutrition. We need urgent attention now to support the communities here that have been displaced. Right now, they're being supported by the host community, but the host community is also struggling because they're running out of resources.
This is a charity trying to help their Mercy Corps. And this is from PBS. This Sudanese woman's tears expose the brutal reality of forgotten war and starvation in Sudan. Selective sympathy is a cruel injustice. Every life should matter. All eyes on Sudan. So we'll take a look at that clip.
Who's made it here with her baby and toddler.
الضرب فيها كتير طلعنا كلنا من منطقتنا.
The fighting is very intense in our area. There's no food there. We have nothing to eat.
She's at the very end of her strength. Her eyes glazed, she sits, staring. A brief moment of rest before they have to move on again.
We're sick, hungry, and we have small children. We are so tired of this war. We won't survive. Living like this is so very hard.
So just terrible circumstances that these people are living under. So this is from NPR. So there's a famine, but they're not declaring a famine. This is a bit of bureaucracy that's really maddening when you get into the details. Is there famine in Sudan? This month, a group of United Nations-backed experts looked at the data and concluded the answer is yes, but no official declaration of famine has been made. In the 1980s, a series of devastating famines struck several countries in Africa, including the infamous famine in Ethiopia in the mid-1980s due to drought. Estimates are that some 1 million people died in Ethiopia alone. The Ethiopian famine inspired the We Are the World song that raised millions. It also eventually led to an effort to come up with a common definition of what constitutes a famine to help governments and humanitarian groups take the necessary actions. That system of figuring out whether a famine is happening or not is called the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC. The assessment is made by a team of independent food security experts known as the Famine Review Committee, backed by the United Nations and other international aid agencies. According to the IPC, the threshold requirements for famine are 1 in 5 households face an extreme lack of food, malnutrition rates among young children are at 30%, and in an affected area, 2 out of 10,000 people are dying every day of causes not related to trauma. In the case of Sudan in 2024, the ongoing civil war has decimated the country's food supply. The Famine Review Committee looked at data collected from Zamzam Camp in North Darfur in Western Sudan, where over 500,000 people are sheltering. Quote, in Zamzam Camp, we had data that confirmed the acute malnutrition threshold for famine had been passed, and that the mortality threshold had nearly passed as early as January, says Lark Walters, a decision support advisor at the Famine Early Warning Systems Network, which is part of the Famine Review Committee. That January data is now nearly 8 months old, Walter says, but it took until August 2nd for the famine assessors to analyze and reach a consensus and publicize their findings. Quote, it is important to recognize that famine can only be confirmed after many deaths occur and mortality rates reach extreme levels. And so government and humanitarian actors should really never wait until a famine is classified to mobilize the resources available to stop it, Walters cautions. In this particular case, there has been concerns for several months now. We all saw this coming. Aid groups such as Doctors Without Borders, as well as the United Nations, told NPR that things have reached a breaking point. They have heard from sources on the ground that people are boiling dirt in water as a last resort to ease the hunger pains of children. Eyewitness sources have also told them that people are selling their children to be married with the hope that they can use the payment for food, or giving their children to armed groups to serve as soldiers in return for money. Meanwhile, since April, when the fighting escalated, both sides in the Sudanese civil war have been blocking humanitarian aid. Each side does not want supplies to reach their opponents. And because the country is now in its dry season, people can't grow their own food. The scientists and data analysts who issued their report this month say what needs to come next is political action. If a country has a functioning government, the UN asks the government to issue a declaration of famine. It's a system that is intended to respect the sovereignty of the nation. But in 2024, well, that would be a first. But in 2024, the Sudanese government has repeatedly denied the existence of famine. The country's UN representative stated at the Security Council that they don't believe the data. Humanitarian groups are now saying that the UN should step in and make a declaration of famine. The UN says it's up to the internationally recognized Sudanese government. In particular, food security experts are calling for convoys of trucks to bring food and nutritional support, not only for those who are malnourished, but for those who are on the brink. The World Health Organization says 8.5 million people in Sudan are at emergency levels of food insecurity, one category away from famine, according to the UN-backed definitions. And there has been progress this week. The Sudanese armed forces agreed to open the Adre border between Chad and Sudan following talks in Geneva. On Thursday, the World Food Program said a convoy of more than a dozen trucks delivered grains and other supplies to about 13,000 people in Western Darfur. The WFP said it had more supplies for 500,000 people that are still awaiting permission from Sudanese authorities. Aid groups said this was a good sign, but a trickle of what is needed to help the population in Sudan. Quote, I've seen some estimates of up to 4 million people would die, said the UN's Justin Brady, referring to calculations made by global groups who predict how many people will die of hunger based on available calories and population size. So it is going to get quite grim here. Now, I want you to imagine if this were happening in France. What if this were happening in Germany? What if this were happening in Japan? It's not only racial, it's also how we categorize countries, how we categorize peoples, whether we think of them as one of us or one of them.
Right.
The people of Sudan, yes, partly because of their race, but also because of how we class them economically and culturally. They're not one of us.
Right.
These are the things that happen if you're one of them. You're out there. You're not in the family of nations as we define that. So you hear about these just absolute horrors, 4 million people starving, 10 million people starving, and you're caught up on a bureaucratic snafu about whether or not you can declare famine. Would they do that if this were Germany?
Yeah, right.
Would there
exactly,
be a bureaucratic snafu that would keep them from bringing food if you had 4 million starving Germans? Absolutely not. And yes, Sudan is ignored because all of the focus is on Gaza, just as Yemen was ignored. And that's partly the fault of the media. And that is also partly the fault, frankly, of podcasts like ourselves. We were not nearly the size that we are now, but that was still going on when we first started. And yeah, these stories tend to get neglected. Unfortunately, part of it is that shows like ours are dependent on better financed media for our stories. We don't have money to send a news team to Sudan. And if they're not covering it, we're not covering it. But that's not to excuse it away. There are sources out there. You have to make a point of going out there to find them and to platform these stories. And that's part of what we've tried to start correcting with the Congo story and with this Sudan story. And that's something we will continue to do because these people are certainly no less worthy of our attention than the Palestinians.
Yeah, and here's a point. We spent a couple segments on this show talking about how, the working class in this country, in the community of nations, in the first world, are being squeezed and are being deprived. And then you have a whole nother level of deprivation and immiseration out in the quote-unquote rest of the world. Okay, so when you add up the rest of the world, which, as Russ just said, we just write off, well, yeah, that happens in places like Sudan, places like Ethiopia, places like Rwanda. What are you going to do? Right? That's just written off. Then you have all of the deprivation within the, quote-unquote advanced nations in the developed world, in the first world. So you add those numbers together, and you have to ask yourself, hey, who exactly is benefiting from this world economic system? Like, it's actually very, very, very few people. There's actually a tiny handful of people when you add everything up, right? Because we don't even think of, as you said, in our discourse, we don't even think of the poverty in Sudan, which is, there's a civil war there, obviously. So this is, and this is especially critical at this time. But it's nothing of a different kind than an overall status quo in which more than half of the world population just doesn't seem to matter. There's a great, I forget who said it. We actually covered their speech. It was actually this actually came from a surprisingly horrible person who said actually a pretty based and insightful thing. Was it Fiona Hill? I want to say it was, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't recall. But we read a speech a while back from someone who made the point that, like, who we consider the rest of the world is actually most of the world.
Most of the world.
Like, actually, we're the rest of the world. Like, most of the world is what we write off as the rest of the world.
Well, and you could just carry that on through to, what is it, like 20 people are holding most of the planet's wealth or half of the planet's wealth. Listen, we're on the YouTube side, so I got to be careful the way I say this. People ask a lot, what do we believe? What do I believe? Really? What do I really believe? The future of humanity, it's revolution or slavery. That's what I believe. I believe we're either going to have a revolution that overthrows our current economic and power dynamics, or we're all going to wind up slaves that own nothing and are told to be happy about it. That's what I think the future is.
What we could do? We could put it this way. This is the way that everybody will understand.
See what happens, Larry, when you fuck a stranger in the ass.
There you go. I think that says it. I think that says it. I think that gets to the essence of it.
Yes.
All right, folks. We will take some super chats and Rumble rants before we close the lights on this stream. Thank you very much for being here, folks. Oh, we got one more here. Let's give Rumble one more plug while we're here because they gave us this one too. This is just for the Rumble app, folks. So make sure you download the Rumble app. Once you download it, search for our channel, Do Dissidents, and follow that channel directly on the app. That's been helping tremendously because our numbers have been growing, and I think it's because people are finding out about our streams sooner because they're downloading the app. So that's hugely important. This will make sure that you get a notification every time we go live. So click the link in the description or pinned live chat to download the Rumble app on your phone. It's free. And if you prefer to watch us on the big screen, it's also available for Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, Roku, LG, and Samsung TVs. So all you need to do is search for Rumble, find us as well as your favorite other creators on the Rumble app so you get notified when we go live. Cool. And I think a lot of you guys have been doing that because I know the Rumble chat, it used to be like the Rumble chat would start small and then it would grow, but now it's starting big. So that's good.
Yep.
That means you guys
that is very good.
Yes.
That was very good.
That's a good sign. Okay, my real name. Oh yeah, sorry, we got that one already there. Thank you. Yeah, this is a dark one, Eric. RFK is looking to some delicious roadside bomb kill when he visits the Middle East. Yeah. That was I won't even make a joke about that one. The Milford, thanks to the $5. Kowloon Walled City. It's been dismantled, but look it up.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
also, burgers on me at Paul's if you want to meet up.
Oh, you know what, man? While you do this, I'm gonna pull up on X because I can't believe I went to my favorite Italian restaurant in New York City yesterday and I didn't even mention it.
What'd you have? The Fruta di Mare? Is that what that is?
No, that was shrimp fra diavolo.
Oh yeah,
and baked clams, and a little Italian cheesecake. I will find my video and I'll
like the shit.
Screen share it.
Wow, we got a lot of super chats just came in. Thank you guys. That's very kind of you. Let me make sure I'm up to date on them. Okay, beautiful. Okay. Alrighty. Oh, did you bring it up yet? Or no, I wasn't looking at the screen.
I got it. Yeah, all right. Hang on.
All right. While you're doing that, I'll just run through some of these. Send the Zionist Israelis back to Ukraine, where they're from. They can have the Nazi part of Ukraine. They actually do think a lot alike. Good idea, Eric Husso. Could be Secretary of State. Kemen G, don't get fooled by the blonde hair. That settler could trace her ancestry back to the folks that betrayed Jesus. Yeah.
All right. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So Gargiulo's is actually where I go on Coney Island. I went to Coney Island yesterday. It was my only chance. I haven't been to the beach at all this year, so I wanted to get it in. I
I absolutely love Coney Island, and when I go there, I love to eat at this place. Old school Italian, goes back to 1907 with the waiters in the tuxedos. And as you can see in this video, it's a nice joint.
And no trip to Coney Island would be complete without dinner at Gargiulo's. Been here since 1907. Old school.
Wow, 1907.
1907, and that place, you know, they lay it on thick. They're playing the Sinatra in the background, Louis Prima, the whole thing. You got the old school Italians who just come in and hang out at the bar. It's got a lot of atmosphere, and the food's great.
I got to cook tonight. I was supposed to thaw some meat, and I forgot to thaw it. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I might have to have a woke vegetarian meal.
Oh no!
No, I'm gonna have to order some of those Rumble.
You're gonna grow bitch tits if you do that.
I'm gonna have to order some of those supplements so that I get my manliness in. Let's see here. Sorry guys. Here we go. Oh, Sparky, thanks for the $10. I just got through researching Indian villages in the 1700s in what became Alabama. French and Spanish had censuses and wrote observations. Some communities outnumbered 1/2 white and practiced mutual respect. It was known as the Mississippi Territory in the 1700s. Of course, your CIA curated history books won't tell you about it. Sparky, you should really do like if you are a human being and not AI, as rumor has it you are, but I believe you when you say you aren't. You should think about maybe doing some video essays. You have a lot of these stories, you know.
Yes, you do.
And if you are AI, it'll be super easy to make a video essay. You could do it with no budget, no time at all. So there you go. You should do it whether or not you're AI.
You could do it with a thought.
Yeah, exactly. P. Walker, thanks for the $5. This assumes that NPR and various NGOs are trustworthy and somehow not astroturfing on behalf of the ownership class and their selfish interests. Sparky, thanks for the $2, says build a better world with bricks. Sunrise, thanks for the $1 over here on Rumble. Gavin Hillock talking out his arse. No Briton has ever said that about what is that?
Can I step away for a second? I think
you think what?
I think I got a delivery.
Oh, Russell got a delivery, got a package. All right. Thank you, Sunrise. Appreciate that. Kenman G. Oh, your video froze. I think when he got up, he may have kicked something. The MSM often highlights other atrocities to distract from Israel crimes. Remember the Yazidis. Thank you, Kenman G. Yes. Corey Andreas. Mercy Corp is a Clinton-funded NGO. I remember Chelsea having a massive hand in it. I thought because you said hard, I remember Chelsea having a massive hard-on for it in 2012 in Africa. No, a massive hand in it in Africa, especially East Africa. Just a heads up, still famine in Sudan is a major issue. Thanks. Yeah, we didn't know about that. I had never heard of Mercy Corp. Never heard of it until today. But thank you for that. Yassine Miller, thanks for the $20 over on YouTube. When I see the struggles of people in Africa and Palestine, it reminds me my personal problems feel insignificant.
Sure.
I hear you. Yes, I hear you. I still have water to shower with, a house to come home to, good health to enjoy my coffee. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Yassine. Appreciate you. Tony B for $10 says, it's Siskel and Ebert. Everything is 5 thumbs down. Thank you. Tony B for $2 says, you guys are great. Kuznetsky Bassane for $19.99. Thank you for that. Says, thanks for the Sudan story. It moved me. Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. That's always gratifying to hear, for sure. All right, folks. I believe that is everything. That is what we got for you guys today. We appreciate you all being here. We will see you either Saturday or Sunday, pending streaming capability from the Uhuru rally. We will figure that out with them. So join our Substack so you're up to date on when and where we're going to be live. If we are live with that, that will be a Rumble exclusive. since YouTube suppresses that content anyway. So why the fuck take a chance, right? We'll get 100,000 views on Rumble, or 800 over on YouTube. So dudissidents.substack.com. So make sure you're signed up to the newsletter. If you can join as a paid member, it helps tremendously. If not, it also helps tremendously for you to know when and where we're going live. And it's a free newsletter. You get audio podcast versions of every live stream, as well as the occasional article when we drop it. All righty, folks. That is our show today, right, Russell? We got nothing else. That's it.
That's it,
All
baby.
Right. Yabba dabba do time.
That's it.
At the quarry.
Finally get some freaking time off.
That's right.
I've been going nonstop since Chicago, man.
That's right. Russell really needs some time off. You got to go back for some Fra Diavolo there. Got to get some more shrimp, some red wine, some bread. All right, folks. That is our show. Now I got to figure out what I'm cooking because I forgot to prep the food right. Oh well. Figure something out. Thank you guys very much for being here. Hey, hit that like button on the way out. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that follow button on Rumble. Make sure you stay in touch. We will see you over the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, pending live stream accessibility on Saturday. But if not, we'll be back here, of course, Sunday night, 7 p.m. for our flagship stream. Until then, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.